Honourable Chair Cavazzini, Honourable Chair Budka, honourable members of the European Parliament. It's a privilege to be here today in front of you as the Executive Vice President designate for tech sovereignty, security and democracy. For the past 10 years, I have had the honour to present European citizens in this House. Now I'm humbled, if given the opportunity, to shape with you, members of European Parliament, policies that are fundamental to our future.
The fundamental values, economy and security of Europe are being challenged in an unprecedented way. We need to respond to these challenges together. If you give me your support, I will work every single day of my mandate in the interest of the European citizens, together with this House and the Member States.
Now or never moment in Europe. In her address to this House last July, President von der Leyen stated that Europe faces a choice. Either we will be shaped by events and the world around us, or we can come together and build Europe's future ourselves. Vi måste se till att Europa kan klara sig i alla situationer. Det innebär att vi måste öka vår egen kapacitet.
We must increase our own capacity in all critical sectors and working more closely with like-minded countries. Europe has enormous potential and its own strengths. When we act together, we are strong.
With the harsh climate, long distances, and over 1,000 kilometers of common external border with a hostile neighbor. So I know how important security is, what preparedness means in practice, and how democracy makes us united and strong. If confirmed, I will carry with determination the portfolio entrusted to me: tech sovereignty, security and democracy. I have had the honour to work with you in this House as a Member of Parliament, and I'm very happy to see many familiar faces from ITRE and other committees here today. In my work in the committees, I have focused especially on innovations and digitalisation with you. Prior to my election to the European Parliament 10 years ago, I had the privilege to serve in the Finnish government in several ministerial positions, from education and science to public administration and transport. I believe this background and experience will be very helpful if confirmed as the Executive Vice President of the European Commission. Honourable members, in the field of technology, we have a lot to work ahead of us. Europe is all too dependent on third countries when it comes to the digital. 80% of our technology comes from outside of EU. But we also have our strengths, which we can and have to boost. I propose here a twofold approach. First, we have to take all the actions to boost innovation and investments in the frontier technologies. Second, we need to ensure level playing field, security and a safe online space for our citizens. Everybody who wishes to do business in Europe has to follow European rules. The key technologies that will shape our future, such as AI, quantum, cloud, semiconductors and space technologies, are at the centre of my mission. Our research is very strong in all these fields. Supporting European groundbreaking technologies and fundamental research is my priority. They are also cornerstones of Europe's competitiveness, as highlighted also Professor Dark's report. Our tech sovereignty depends on a strong microchips industry. In some areas, we are the best in the world. In others, we lag dangerously behind. The ambitious Chips Act has helped us to mobilise more than 80 billion euros of public and private investments. We need to do more to reach our 20% target of global production. I will consider additional actions to the Chips Act. Quantum is a technology of the future where Europe has many reasons for optimism. For a coordinated EU approach, I will present a quantum strategy that includes quantum chips plan. In AI, we have the world's first legislation, also thanks to the European Parliament. The AI Act will soon apply everywhere in the EU, protecting our citizens, and I will ensure it's swiftly implemented as an enabler for innovation in a transparent and predictable way. I want Europe to become an AI continent, the best place in the world for develop trustworthy and advanced AI by implementing the following actions. In my first 100 days, I will boost AI computing power of our supercomputers with the AI Factories initiative. It will offer access to computing power to our startups, researchers, and industry. Secondly, I will leverage with the Member States, industry, and civil society and other commissioners our leadership in sectors such as automotive, pharma, robotics, and aeronautics. I will present Apply AI strategy to boost new industrial uses of AI and also to improve public services, for example, healthcare. At the same time, I will make sure that everyone can benefit from the possibilities of AI. Also, the AI adoption path must be sustainable for our workforce. AI can support each worker and increase productivity and thus support greater prosperity for all of us. Thirdly, we will develop an AI ecosystem in research and science. Here I will work together with the Commissioner for Startups, Research and Innovation to set up the AI Research Council. Honourable members, to boost innovation, we need the highest standards of connectivity. Here we are lagging behind. Europe must make a leap in smart and secure connectivity, especially in 6G. I plan to propose the Digital Networks Act to boost secure, high-speed broadband for everybody. Technology and digitalization play an important role in our green transition and in achieving our climate goals. To improve cloud services and to upscale our high-performance computing capacity in an energy-efficient way, I will propose the EU Cloud and AI Development Act. The Act will allow even smallest businesses to access advanced AI services. As an AI continent, Europe needs more data sharing and better access for high-quality data, in line with our data protection rules. I will address this via a dedicated data union strategy, as also suggested by the Letta report. Europe has much untapped potential in space. If confirmed, I will propose, in cooperation with the Commissioner for Defence and Space, an EU space industrial strategy. All these initiatives can only succeed if we invest in Europe's most valuable asset, its people. I intend to put a particular emphasis on the skills we need, most obviously those in the twin transition. The EU is far away from its target from 20 million ICT experts, and we will never get there if we do not attract the best talents, also girls and women. Honourable members, with the Digital Service Act and the Digital Markets Act, we have set standards to protect the fundamental rights of citizens when using online services, as well as ensuring fair competition in the online world. Having been the Parliament's ITRE rapporteur on DSA, I'm very committed to applying both the DSA and DMA fully. We should use the oversight and enforcement powers swiftly and rigorously, working closely with the Executive Vice President for a clean, just and competitive transition as regards the EMA. I will make sure that we dedicate enough competent staff for this work. My first priorities will be ensuring fair competition and level playing field in the area of e-commerce. We need to be mindful on how social media affects the life of citizens, particularly children. I will call firmly on all market players to take their responsibilities and to make sure that the online world for minors is safe and helpful instead of harming them. I will give full support to the EU-wide inquiry on the broader impacts of social media, led by the Commissioner for Health, and to action plan on cyberbullying, led by the Commissioner for Youth. To be able to protect our core values and democracy, I will defend in every possible way the rule of law, in particular the freedom of information and speech. I look forward to preparing the Democracy Shield, together with the Commissioner for Democracy, Justice and Rule of Law, in order to protect our democracies against electoral interference, disinformation, and manipulation by malign foreign actors. Reputable and independent media is the key as media literacy of our citizens. As a former journalist, this is very important also to me personally. The European Media Freedom Act puts in place vital provisions to defend media pluralism in the EU, and I will give full support to the Commissioner for Democracy, Justice and the Rule of Law to ensure its proper enforcement. One of Europe's greatest assets is our rich culture. Together with the Commissioner for Culture, I will work to protect our cultural diversity and to ensure that creators are being rewarded for their works, also in the age of AI. The European Union is often criticized for creating too much bureaucracy for the citizens and businesses. I take this feedback very seriously. Reducing the administrative burden and simplifying processes is high on my agenda. If confirmed, I will strive to reduce reporting obligations. During this mandate, many of the digital rules are up to review, and I would like to reflect together with you and with the stakeholders where there is a space for cutting red tape. Beyond regulatory simplification, there is also much room for improvement by using technology for burden reduction, building on the EU wallet. The business wallet should be a single point of entry for every request that reaches a company from the side of governments in Europe, and it should be secure and user-friendly. Honourable members, given the geopolitical situation with recent hybrid attacks, including on our critical infrastructure, it's clear that Europe needs to be more secure and resilient. High standards on cybersecurity must be met, especially in critical sectors. In this regard, we need urgent actions on healthcare. If confirmed, in cooperation with the Commissioner for Health, I will propose in the first 100 days an action plan on the cybersecurity of hospitals and healthcare providers. It's important that the technologies we develop ourselves, such as AI or quantum, cannot be used against us. That is why we should, together with our allies, tackle the technology leakage to countries of concern. We must secure our communication, cloud and connected devices. We must make sure that the supply of critical telecom equipment is in the hands of trusted vendors. I will also make concrete proposals on how to improve the resilience of our submarine cable infrastructure. Honourable members, migration will remain one of the top political issues, and I will work closely with the Commissioner for Internal Affairs and Migration. Implementing the Pact of Migration and Asylum is a priority to me. It's important to create safe and legal pathways for people and to ensure their integration into the European societies. At the same time, we need to fight smuggling networks and prevent irregular migration, thereby also preventing further loss of life. And we need stronger and more effective return procedures for people without the legal right to stay in the EU. For Schengen to work well, the EU external borders must be protected. We need Frontex to support member states, and for this, more resources are needed. Protecting our borders requires a European solution, one that holds also strong against hybrid attacks without compromising on our values. At the same time, we must be strong on internal security. In the first months of our mandate, we will prepare a new internal security strategy to strengthen our preparedness and respond to increasingly complex threats. Honourable members, the best investment right away to European security is investing in the security of Ukraine. For our union to be stronger, we have to build a true EU defence union with a competitive defence industry. Europe needs to invest more and invest better and invest together. I will contribute willingly to the Defence White Paper to be prepared by the High Representative Vice President together with the Commissioner of Defence. We will identify the decisions needed to deliver to our Member States the full spectrum of defence capabilities and European defence projects of common interest, based on joint European investments and industrial capabilities. Finally, working with my colleagues, I will contribute to enhancing the EU preparedness following up the advice of President Niinistö's report. The EU should become an ever-greater contributor for security of the European continent in partnership with and support of NATO. In all these areas, I will not work in isolation, but in close cooperation with the responsible members of the College. I will work closely with the European Parliament, the Member States and stakeholders to make sure that our policies serve all Europeans. If confirmed, I will prioritise participating in plenary debates, committee meetings and trialogues. Honourable members, if confirmed, in all my actions, I will work together with you towards a more prosperous Europe, in the intersection between democracy, technology and security. Let's build a stronger, more resilient and more democratic Europe.
Thank you very much for this opening speech, and I give the floor to Eva Meidel on behalf of EPP.
Thank you very much, Chair, Commissioner Designate. Welcome to this hearing. First of all, thank you for what was a very clear, but also already a very concrete opening. We much appreciate that. I believe if we were to talk tech sovereignty, we should also zoom out and see where Europe finds itself in the world. And I would like to quote what the Australian Strategic Policy Institute tracks. It tracks who leads in the 44 top emerging technology. And what it has found out is that 37 out of 44 cases, the country that leads is China, followed by the US. But there is still some hope for optimism because Europe is still in the game, particularly in some areas. I'm also vice chair of the US delegation, and whenever I visit, I'm struck by the level of private sector involvement in deep tech and how the private sector works with government. Basically, there's way more trust by government in the market. Very often in Europe, it feels the other way around, where we try to recreate that from the offices of Berlaymont very often by copying American success, whether it's in cloud or satellite constellations or even AI. So my question to you is, how can you redress this challenge so that the EU institutions trust the free market and work with private sector innovators to scale the next European deep tech innovation rather than innovating the American wheel? Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Paunova, Mrs. Meidel, for your very, I think, important question. That was really in the core of my portfolio when it comes to tech sovereignty and competitiveness of European innovations and industry. I think the starting point for this is very much that we should make sure always that our legal framework, that it's encouraging investments and innovations in Europe. So we should make sure that we don't have extra regulatory framework, red tape, not extra bureaucracy and administration for our businesses. And in the same time, we have to boost investments, so it means often that the permitting processes in the member states, that they should be faster than what they are now. And as we clearly know, President von der Leyen was stating that this commission will be investment commission. So we will seek all the solutions, how to boost investments in this field and how to also create framework that encourages innovations. I think it's important also to pay attention for the skills of the people, because this is one of our main challenges in Europe. We have an aging population in Europe, and we have to take care that everybody is having good basic skills, but also that the people have possibilities to rescale and upscale their skills, that we have excellent education in Europe, and also that we can attract talented people from all over the world. Where we can be very proud in Europe is that we have top research in Europe. And I think we have to take good care of that, because fundamental research is very much basis for our all innovations. But then, to an area where we have to now look very carefully all the solutions, it's really how to have better access to capital, how to have better access to venture capital, private capital for our SMEs and for our startups. There we are lagging behind, and we have Draghi reports where we can base on.
30 seconds.
It's a minute, actually.
No, because we exceeded.
Well, with the commissioner designate, we know each other for quite a while, as she still calls me by my maiden name, so my family will be very happy about that. So thanks for reminding how I started in the parliament. You mentioned quantum chips strategy, that's something concrete you're going to propose. Can you elaborate in that? Because we believe that quantum could be still one of those areas where it could be a game changer for Europe. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for this question. Certainly, quantum is, like you said, it's an area where we can be very positive and optimistic in Europe, because there we have, again, we have the situation that we have super talented researchers there. We have high top quality research in this field of quantum, but still, again, the same obstacle, what we are often facing, that our market is too fragmented here. We can also see that many member states, they have their own quantum strategies, and we have top researchers on this field, and now we should have more comprehensive common approach also to this field. And that's why I'm also planning to come up with this quantum plan. Maybe it could be also followed by Quantum Act, to make sure that we can pool our researches and resources and also all our efforts, that we are not too fragmented, because also big investments are needed in this sector. So we have to pool the researchers together, all the science, but then also to build industry around this.
Thank you. SND and Laura Ballarin Sereta.
Mrs. Virkkunen, we are assessing you today in another Super Tuesday, 1 week after the second victory of Donald Trump in the United States. Some American online platforms like Facebook, Instagram or X are already under formal proceedings by the European Commission on the possibility of breaching the Digital Services Act. We are suffering a global pandemic of mental health, especially the minors, due to the harmful and excessive use of social media, depression, alimentary disorders, cyberbullying, or violent behavior. But we know that owners of these big tech companies are aware of the effects of their addictive designs, the misuse of algorithms, and lack of effective age control tools in order to protect users. So my question is, do you commit to confront, not only call, the future American administration and the big companies by taking new legislative measures, like the Digital Fairness Act, but more, to require platforms to develop all possible tools to preserve the well-being of our minors, but not only minors, to protect adults from harmful content and women from online gender violence, and how? Thank you.
Honourable Member, thank you very much for this very important question, and I think this will be one of the highest priority now for the Parliament also, to make sure that we have safe online environment for our minors. It will be a priority for me when I'm enforcing our DSA. I see that online platforms and social media, they have many very positive impacts to our life and also for our kids. They can be contacts to their friends and their families. But then there's also this other side you were taking up. First of all, the time, what the kids are spending with the screen, and also the content, what they see there. And these both can be very harmful. It's said clearly in our DSA regulation that online platforms, they have to take care of the safety, security and privacy on high level when it comes to the minors. And we know that all of them are not taking this responsibility like they should. And like you said, investigations and proceedings is also already going on from the Commission side. In the same time, I think it's important that we are continuing the dialogue also with the online platforms, and also I'm proposing guidelines for this purpose during the spring for the online platforms, how to take care of the safe online environment for kids. And it will be based to better internet for kids strategy also. But I think we have to be also very strict here when we look at the responsibility of the online platforms, because they should make sure that they don't have that kind of addictive algorithms, that the people are spending more and more times on online platforms, because this is posing systematic risk, and it's addressed in our legislation that they should assess their systematic risks. And also the content, if they are aware, if online platforms are aware that the minors are using their services, then the services should be fit for minors' age. So I think we have to be now very concrete and strict here.
Thank you. In the name of PFV, Clara Dostalo. Excuse me. It was my
Thank you
sorry.
for your answer. And as a follow-up question, I would like to stress that our single market is inundated with dangerous and cheap products from third countries. Online commerce is cheap and comfortable, but puts the safety of our citizens at risk and provokes unfair competition with the local businesses in Europe. We have digital service and data protection laws, but we need to go further. So, in this sense, do you commit to take additional measures, and which ones, to ensure that online marketplaces will take responsibility to stop the entrance of unsafe products from third countries, and also trying to make Europe this island of protection of consumers that now we are more alone than 1 week before in this sense? Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I think you are really touching the most burning topics now when we speak about DSA and enforcing DSA, really protection of minors, and then also e-commerce part, that we have to make sure that we have level playing field and fair competition also for our SMEs and businesses in Europe, and we can take care of safety of our citizens. And also here, online platforms, which are online shops, they have to also assess their systematic risks, and if they are aware that they are selling illegal products, they are supposed to take them down. And we know that there's also investigations and also proceedings going on from the Commission side now when it comes to Temu and AliExpress, currently very famous on-shopping platforms. There's also, of course, benefits for the consumers when it comes to online shopping, because there is much more consumer choices. It's easy. 10 million packets is arriving to Europe every day. But we have to make sure that they are not selling illegal products, that we have also fair competition for our SMEs in Europe. So everybody has to respect European rules here.
Thank you. And now from PFE, Clara Dostalova.
Thank you very much. Dear Madam Commissioner Designate, on behalf of Patriots for Europe, I would like to touch on two sets of questions. First, a Digital Services Act and European Democracy Shield. Freedom of speech is a cornerstone of European democracy. Within your portfolio is implementation of DSA. With regard to implementation of DSA and the setting up of European Democracy Shield, I would like to ask you, how do you intend to handle the risk to freedom of speech? Following recent admissions of censorship by digital companies such as Meta, I would like to ask whether you are ready to publish all Commission requests to very large platforms to censor specific messages or specific accounts on a public register together with related ground.
Thank you, Honourable Member, for this very important question also, because freedom of speech is one of our fundamental rights in Europe, and we want to make sure that we are protecting this important right for all our citizens. But of course, then there has to be also balanced when the online platforms are taking actions, because in DSA, we wanted to be very clear that they have to take actions if there's illegal products or content online. They have to take this down. But when it comes to the content what is not illegal, then they have to find right balance. Sometimes it's possible that also content what is not illegal is posing systematic risk. And we know also that freedom of speech doesn't mean that we can freely post everything when it comes to hate speech or violating someone's privacy, for example. But we wanted also to make sure that at the same time, when online platforms are taking care of that, that they are not spreading illegal content, that also they are respecting our freedom of speech, and also the users of online platforms, that they have rights also to get notice if some of their content is, for example, taken down. So there has to be a statement of reasons for the user also of that, and there has to be a dispute mechanism also for the user. So at the same time, we wanted to protect freedom of speech and make sure that the online platforms are respecting our democratic values here, but at the same time, they have to also look that they are not spreading illegal content. And it's important that the balance is found there.
Thank you. My second set of questions concerns e-commerce. How will you ensure that goods that do not comply with EU law are dealt with, particularly where the main players, which are big platforms, are based in third countries? How do you want to guarantee that the European producers are not disadvantaged compared to third countries' producers, as it is the case now? And please describe all steps that the Commission will undertake in order to enforce compliance with DSA. Thank you very much.
Honourable Member, DSA states very clearly at these online shops that they have to know their business customers. And if they have the information that illegal products are sold on the platform, they have to take them down. And now it's important that we are fully enforcing DSA and using all the tools we have there to make sure that those platforms are taking their responsibilities here. But also we need bigger effort here, because also we have to look the customs part, that how the customs, how they can share the information better way, and also market surveillance authorities, that they have been also taking the actions what needed. Like I said earlier, 10 million packages are coming to European markets every day, so it's a huge amount. So we have to take actions in many fields, and this will be certainly one of the first topics the Commission has to focus now, because it's very unfair for our companies, for our SMEs who are fulfilling all the legislation in Europe, and also this is a matter of safety of our citizens also.
On behalf of ECR, Piotr Miller.
Thank you very much. Szanowna Pani Komisarz.
Dear Commissioner Designate.
Unia Europejska.
The European Union is in an economic crisis, and increasingly often, we are a user and not a producer of the state-of-the-art technologies. We are no longer competitive in the global markets. Such legal acts as DSA, AI Act, DMA, etc. will probably not improve this competitiveness. My question is as follows. Are you going to stop the Commission from being so hyperactive with regard to digital regulations? Because the Commission is hyperactive. My second question is about the precautionary principle that was used as the overriding principle by the Commission. Would you agree that our experience from the recent years goes to show that some of those regulations, at least some of those regulations, did undermine our competitiveness with respect to the United States or China? This is mentioned by Mario Draghi in his report. What are your priorities here? How do you perceive the United States? As a rival, as a competitor, or as a partner? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. USA, it's the most important trade partner for EU and also most important strategic partner when it comes to security. And we are cooperating very closely, of course, with the USA. But we have different tradition with legislation, especially when it comes to digital part. Yes, we are often facing this criticism that we are over-regulating our markets, and I think we have to be also serious with this and take this feedback also very seriously and look that where is the room that we can cut red tape, administration, bureaucracy, from the industry, SMEs. I see it's a very important priority for the next Commission. As you know, President of the Commission, von der Leyen, has stated that all the commissioners have to look their own sector, how to reduce, especially reporting obligations. We are supposed to cut them 20% and more than 30% from our SMEs. So I'm taking this very seriously. But also now, when we are in implementing phase in many of our digital regulations, I'm looking especially at how we can simplify now the processes, how we can look if there's some overlapping regulation, and how we can make sure that these are not setting burdens for our SMEs. I think also that regulation is often needed also for the innovations, because it's also important from the business perspective that they have legal certainty when they are investing to some new ideas, that they know that there's legal path. And there we have to also long-term approach, because these investments, they can be very, very big also. So I think it's also needed, but we shouldn't be too bureaucratic here. And it's very high priority for me and also for the Commission to look also that our regulatory framework is innovation friendly.
Mam pytanie uzupełniające, bo tutaj mówiliśmy też przed chwilą o...
I have a follow-up question on the freedom of speech. There are many concerns about preventive censorship, especially in the social media. What are you going to do to allay those fears, to offer more transparency? We also know what happened with regard to X platform, former Twitter. Can you guarantee, can you give us some assurances in this respect? Are you going to disclose the agreements between X and the European Commission? Citizens want to understand what's happening. They want to know.
Honourable Member, like I said already earlier, everybody who is operating and doing business in Europe has to respect our rules. So the same rules for everybody who are in the scope. And currently, I know that Commission is investigating, and there is several proceedings towards these online platforms who are not respecting our rules and regulation. Of course, DSA came into the force just 1 year ago, so there is also all the time dialogue going on with these online platforms that how to comply with EU regulation. But I think this is very fair also, our regulatory framework for online platforms, because it makes sure that everybody is having same rules. They are respecting our democracy, our rules, our legislation in Europe, and it's same for everybody in the world, for the European ones and for those who are outside of Europe. And that is my approach also onwards.
On behalf of Renew, Svenja Han.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Designate, for laying out the new proposals for new legislation that you're planning to work on. I think there are quite some important topics, and thank you also for committing in general to the goal of cutting down red tape and bureaucracy. But unfortunately, so far you stayed very vague about what you want to do, having in mind that reduction of bureaucracy and more simplification is actually very crucial for enhancing competitiveness and innovation in Europe. You said you want to cut red tape after a dialogue with EP and stakeholders. So I was wondering if you could give us a bit more clarity, particularly how will you measure the designated cuts of 25 to 35% of bureaucracy? What is even the basis for that assessment? Which rules are you planning to cut down, or do you only want to act after hearing from stakeholders, or do you have your own ideas? And will you commit to the one in, two out principle? And regarding the efficient rollout of legislation, looking at the AI Act, you mentioned that. How will you ensure that the implementation balances out the weakness of the legal text and make it easier for companies to comply? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. This will be one of my main priorities during my term, if confirmed, to cut red tape and bureaucracy and extra administration and do Europe an easier place for businesses and our SMEs. So I will start with the reporting obligations. If confirmed, in the first day in the office, I will ask my services to list all the reporting obligations, what we have in our digital legislation for our industries and SMEs. And then when we have a concrete list, we can see that how we can cut these obligations. Also, of course, digitalization, automatization, AI can be used in many ways to make things easier, but I think it's not enough. We also have to cut the administrative burden as such. And that's why now when we are implementing many of our digital legislations, I will look all the time at how we could simplify the processes. Is there something what is overlapping where we could make it easier for businesses to comply with these rules? And also we have some new ideas, like I was mentioning this business wallet. We could make it a very practical tool for our businesses that they have one contact point always if the public administration governors are asking some reports from them, some information, it could be always transmitted by this structure, and it would be very easy to access also. So I'm planning to have very concrete measures here, and I'm also planning to come to the Parliament, if confirmed, after 1 year with the fitness check with the digital area, that you can see really that what is the situation with this cutting of bureaucracy and what efforts we could do. And like I mentioned earlier, during this term, many of the regulations, they are coming to revision, and I think it's also a good time to look that are we having too detailed regulation? Is something where we can be more general in the future?
Thank you very much. That was a very helpful answer. Maybe you could clarify if you commit to the one in, two out principle. And talking about implementation, you very much care about the DSA. We're hearing now from the US that the designated vice president sees NATO as a bargaining chip to shield ex-owner Musk from EU regulation. How are you ensuring a consequent enforcement of the DSA in time of blackmailing from democratic partners? And how are you going to uphold the dialogue with our transatlantic partners, which is very crucial now, particularly with the Trade and Technology Council, that we're actually going to see tangible results? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. USA is our most important trade partner and also partner in security, as we know. And I'm very willing to continue good cooperation with USA. Also in the digital area and the area of technologies, we have had very good cooperation during the last years, and we have many things common, for example, in the field of cybersecurity. So I see this very positively, that we will work closely together also in the future. But in the same time, of course, our rules, they apply for everybody who is operating in Europe, who is doing business in Europe. And I think this is very fair also. Same rules for everybody. And for the USA companies, it's true that Europe is, for many of them, a very big market, also one of the biggest markets. So, of course, also the companies, they are protecting their business interests, and it's very normal. I see it also. But we will continue also to good dialogue with them. And sometimes also, as we know, Commission has to open formal procedures also if dialogues doesn't help.
Thank you. In the name of Greens, Alexandra Giese.
Executive Vice President Designate, I very much welcome your strong commitment to European legislation, to the DSA, the DMA, and the AI Act. But we do know that the victory of Donald Trump in the US is closely linked to the support of Elon Musk and other tech tycoons who will have a strong influence on the US administration and who want to avoid any kind of legislation. And they're saying it. And my colleague Svenja Hahn just mentioned the example of the future Vice President of the US. So that means if we want sovereignty, we need to have tech sovereignty as well. And that means a reliable European digital infrastructure that goes beyond AI and quantum. Hence my questions. Can you commit to the fact that building a sustainable European digital infrastructure based on open standards will be the main goal of your mandate and that it will inform the work of the whole European Commission? And will you come up with a comprehensive strategy for European tech sovereignty based on a scientific study that clearly defines the priorities in the first 6 months of your mandate? And will you introduce performance measurements for public money to ensure that all the different initiatives taken really deliver the desired results? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I'm fully committed to developing our tech sovereignty and our security and reducing our dependencies and boosting the competitiveness of Europe and welfare also our citizens. We are very dependent when it comes to technology and digitalization. 80% comes outside of Europe. So we have to really build up our own capacity in all the critical fields and in all frontier technologies. And at the same time, we need also like-minded partners from all over the world. It's clear that in Europe we are deciding on our own rules in Europe, and everybody who is operating and doing business here has to respect these rules. We are making sure that. I think it was a very interesting idea what you had about this, our open source and open standards also, that how we are going to continue with this. And we can say that this has been really European success story, and they have been in the heart of our policies of connectivity, electronic identity, data, and AI also. So we will continue this approach. And I think it's important now, especially when we are trying to share data more and more, it's really needed. So in data spaces and also in the cloud services, this is important basis because it has been success for our services in Europe that we have been very, very strong when it comes to open source and open standards. And also now we can see that also the market is taking up here because the open source projects where European startups, where they are doing, for example, now the projects on generative AI and also in microelectronics. So this has been a successful approach, and I'm very willing to continue in this with this field on open source and open standards.
That commitment to open standard, I think that opens possibilities for a lot of SMEs as well. Digital technologies require a very physical infrastructure, in particular data centers. But currently the bulk of cloud infrastructure is run by non-European companies, which are subject to non-European jurisdictions. And therefore our data cannot be considered safe, even if the data centers are located in Europe. In spite of this concern, in fact, the market share of European cloud providers is rapidly declining and not rising. So will you make sure that the European Cloud and AI Development Act provides a framework in which European cloud providers can actually thrive? Thank you.
Thank you for this question. And this is really the main purpose of this cloud initiative, because like you said, we are lagging behind when it comes to cloud. We are very dependent. Europe has only the third of the data centers that USA has, and our capacity gap is widening here. So that is why I'm going to propose EU Cloud and AI Development Act, if confirmed, and they should bring this much needed independent computing capacity for our small businesses and also in different economical sectors, both for training AI models, but also for interference and fine-tuning. And it will contain also measures to stimulate innovation and boost investment in the cloud for AI capacity, cut red tape, and also, what is important to me, also we will set very ambitious sustainability targets in this act.
Time for the left, and Jussi Saramo.
Kiitos, arvoisa
Thank you, Chairman. Commissioner designate. The Draghi report awoke us to the fact that we are losing to the US and China if nothing is done. China is a one-party state, and workers exist for state capitalism. The US has a different economy, and for ordinary people it's rather far from Europe. But none of these countries wants to take responsibility for climate change or the disappearance of species. And we have been living in a utopia of free markets, but whereas other countries are protecting their markets. So we have to see how the European champions can compete. But a society based on private monopolies is a bad model. I'd like to ask you how we can achieve technological independence vis-à-vis the US and China. We have companies actually get huge state aid at the moment. How, in practical terms, how can we create a success out of this?
Kysymyksestä.
Thank you for that question. We don't have to start from ground zero. We have the letter and Draghi reports have underlined what we have to do. We have to strengthen our single market. This is one of the ways in which we can increase prosperity in Europe. We have too many barriers between the member states. We have to reduce many of these barriers. We have to invest in research and product development, and also we have to find more ways to get innovations to market. I don't favour the idea that politicians choose the areas where we invest in, but we have certain critical sectors where we have to strengthen our own capacity, where we are too dependent at the moment on the rest of the world. One of these is microchips, and here we have the CHIPS Act, which has achieved good results during the year, but we need more. Our goal is that Europe can produce 20% of its chips itself. It's not 10% at the moment, so we need more actions. And here we are very much dependent on the rest of the world, and it threatens our digital transition. And another area which is critical for us is AI, and there's a lot of investment there at the moment because it will change our economy and societies a lot and will increase productivity. As the Draghi report says, this is one of the problems, is that we have lagged behind in technology compared to the US, and that's why our productivity is not so good. Thirdly, we have to invest in people's skills. We can't just be a question of skilled people. We also need to have skilled people and a skilled workforce.
Kiitos, hyvä komissaari ehdokas.
Thank you. You are up for the post for technological sovereignty, security and democracy. That's one of the most important packages after the US elections. And things have not been perfect up to now, and now we are dependent on a state where the leader and the people around him is more like a comic figure. Now, when it comes to competitiveness in the defence sector, we use a lot of money on defence, according to the Draghi report. And we spend a lot in the US. And in the US, this is not based on free competition. And there's also weapons used in Israel. So should we be dependent on a country like this? How can we, in the weapons industry, how can we achieve independence if the member states are not guided towards the common good? How can we encourage member states to do that? The defence industry is one area where the EU should strengthen its own capacity. We have a similar situation as in technology. About 80% of the acquisitions are made outside of the EU. And of course, in terms of our security of supply or the security of our economy, this is not sustainable. We need to have our own industry. The member states must also invest more in their defence procurement so that our defence industry gets orders and can make more investments. But to be competitive in this area, of course, the member state look for the best quality, which responds to their needs best. We must make sure that we have a high-quality industry. We have to invest in research and product development so that we have competitive arms, so that member states make their acquisitions in the European market.
And Arno Bausamer in the name of ECN.
Ja, sehr geehrte Vorsitzende.
Chairman, Madam Virkkunen, with employment, with the nomination of the commissioners, I noticed that Madam von der Leyen placed great importance on gender balance. Madam Virkkunen, you were minister in Finland a while and 10 years here in Parliament. Would you see yourself as a quota woman, or do you see yourself as somebody who the Commission felt that you would be the best person for the job? Or do you see yourself as simply as a kind of token person there to achieve gender balance? Now, about quotas, I simply wanted to ask what your opinion is concerning this. Do you feel that it is necessary to promote women in order to achieve some sort of quota? Or do you think that there ought to be entrepreneurial freedom and freedom to exercise democracy as one would like? Thank you.
Thank you very much for this question. And of course, it's a very important question that how we can promote also the working careers of women and men. And I very much see myself that everybody should have the same opportunities in our societies, regardless of their gender. So I'm very much encouraging everybody to use your own potential and use your talent. And often when it comes, for example, to politics, also technology, I think the girls, they need more encouragement also, because we are also losing a lot of potential if all the people are not using all the talent and potential they are having. But of course, now you are the ones who are now scrutinizing if I'm fitting for this job. But if confirmed, I will also work for all the girls and women, and I'm very much encouraging them to use all their potential in this world, because it's really needed.
Frau Virkkunen,
Madam Virkkunen, you emphasize chip industry. I come from an area in Germany, in the middle of Germany, and around the area of Magdeburg, there is the Magdeburger region, which is very rich in this type of activity. So perhaps more potato chips could be produced there than computer chips, seeing that the area is particularly rich in potatoes. So and then there are the 10 million and paying that back in the form of subsidy. So I was wanting to ask, what sort of effect would this have? In other words, this type of promotion. And the second question is, what do you feel as far as promoting the local chip industry? To what extent do you think this can be done? And to what extent do you think this is absolutely necessary to promote the local industry and the national industry?
Thank you very much, honourable member. And of course, farming is also, and agricultural sector is also playing an important role in our economy and our society. And we have a specific commissioner for agriculture in this field, and it's also a very important priority for us. But as nominated as a commissioner designate for the field of technology, I'm more focusing on these chips here. And why we are paying so much attention to these chips, it's the reason that we are so dependent on third countries. So it's important part of our technological sovereignty, because there's also risks when we are exporting most of the chips from the outside, from the third countries. So we want to make sure that we have also our own capacity here, that we are competitive also, but we also have a value chain where we have also partners all over the world. So we are trying to de-risk our economy this way. And now when we are going to continue with the CHIPS Act, I see it's very important that we are contacting our member states and industry and also the regions to really see what strengths they are having here. Because one of the most important things is to create ecosystems here, and the society and need for talented, skilled people is a very important part of this CHIPS Act.
Thank you very much. We've just finished the first round, and it is our tradition that we exceeded 5 minutes till now. So remember, the time is money, and let's start immediately the second round. 1 and 1.
Thank you.
1 and 2.
Thank you so much.
1 and 1 would be better.
1 in, 2 out, 1 in, 1 out. So, okay, now we do the second round. And we start with the EPP, Pablo Arias Echeverría.
Muchas gracias. Thank you very much, Commissioner Designate Ms. Virkkunen. I'd like to, first of all, remember the victims of the devastating floods and storms in Valencia and Eastern Store in Spain. We need to have responses to situations like this, and the Vinistu report will be able to prepare us for this. We can't change what happened, but we cannot forget it. Therefore, we need to speed up bureaucratic processes which are obstacles to assistance for those people who have suffered damage. We need solidarity. And what digital tools could be used to speed up the bureaucratic process and to ensure that the assistance is available? We need to also make the most of artificial intelligence and digital tools to provide specific prevention and evaluation tools. What technological solutions can you propose to anticipate these phenomena and limit their effects? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. And first of all, my deepest condolences and solidarity to the victims, families, and to the whole region. And I want to thank and pay respect to everybody who has been taking part in this emergency and rescue response in your area. It's now our collective responsibility to learn also from these tragic events and develop solutions to prevent such losses in the future. You were referring to Niinistö's report, and it was clearly underlining that we must be better prepared in the future. And here I will work together with the Commissioner-designate for Preparedness and Crisis Management to ensure that we will take proactive actions at EU level. We have to make better use also technological solutions and ensure that all available tools are in place to make the access to aid as flawless as possible. And also, in EU level, we must be stronger on both climate mitigation and also climate adaptation. In this work, I think also that the digital tools, they are very helpful. And for example, in the future, we can have help from our Destination Earth project. This initiative is currently being developed, and it's a blend of physical and AI-based models to predict extreme weather events. And this will improve response capabilities and better support civil protection and responders. So this is making use of our Copernicus satellite observations and other relevant data, and exploit also the power of our leading supercomputers and generative AI models, and all the key stakeholders are working here. So in the next few months, I will make sure that the Destination Earth system becomes available to all public authorities so that they can start using it.
For the S&D, Matthias Ecke.
Commissioner Designate, you mentioned that 80% of EU's digital products and services are currently imported, and we have heard about and spoke about the unacceptable threats of the Trump Vice President Vance over Elon Musk's platform X. So, I mean, it's absolutely clear we need more tech sovereignty, we need to reduce Europe's dependence on Chinese and US tech giants. So, but my question is, how do you really envision the EU's role in developing a digital public infrastructure, a robust Euro stack compromising hardware, infrastructure, data, AI applications, governance elements? What exactly, Ms. Virkkunen, do you plan to do to improve EU's capacities to be less dependent on digital solutions developed outside the EU? And I mean not only like the title, not only some act and some strategy and some plan, but the measures, the concrete measures. What do you want to have achieved by 2029? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I also think that always the act, it's not the answer for everything, but often now when it comes to frontier technologies, it's also the way how we are gathering the expertise together, because we often have the challenge that member states are doing very fragmented actions. So ACT is also the way how we have the best researchers, industry, member states together also, and we can pool our resources and expertise. But like you said, we are far too dependent on third countries when it comes to the technologies, and where we have a lot of work ahead of us. When it comes digital infrastructure, there we are lagging behind of our digital decade targets. And also when it comes to data centers, cloud, supercomputing, quantum, and smart connectivity. So in all of these fields, we have to make actions. And often it means that we have to do investments, and we have to be also an attractive place for private investors. And we have to work towards that together. But you also were mentioning open internet stack. And of course, it's an important part, also our approach. And I can tell that I will also work towards equipping EU with this open internet stack, because it's a collection of open services and platforms, like it was already mentioned here earlier, that it's one of our strengths. And there is open services and platforms which are alternative for appropriate solutions. So the aim here is also have to more competition with lower barriers for our startups and empower our users and improve also privacy in this field. And when we are linking these open components to that what we already have, like to digital IDs, payment systems and data management and in exchange platforms, it means that then we can also provide public services as healthcare and education. So I see that this is also an important part, how we can encourage our SMEs and startups also and give these open opportunities to everybody. But we have to now act in many fields, and I see that really the part of infrastructure is crucial for us.
So now for the EPP, Pilar del Castillo Vera.
Vice President designated, welcome once more to this former house that we will continue to be also your house, I'm sure. We know that competitiveness depends to a large extent on our capacity to innovate in the tech sector. On the other hand, development on advanced technologies such as IoT or AI requires massive amounts of data. And data requires robust, fast, low latency, and secure networks for effective flow, storage, sharing, and access. By the way, talking about access, the vertical regulation on e-vehicle data is still to be presented. As you know, the EU faces a gap, on the other hand, of 200 billion euros to deploy 5G and 6G coverage. We know from the white paper on the future of European connectivity the need to tackle all these challenges. My question is, in the context of competitiveness, could you elaborate a bit more on your view about the announced Digital Network Act and when we can expect the Commission proposal? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for this question. And Digital Network Act, it will be one of the acts I will propose, but it's also that now we are also reviewing our telecom legislation with this act, because we are really trying to use now this opportunity also to reduce bureaucracy and administration and make sure that Europe is an attractive place for the investments. And especially we have to prepare for 6G also. And we know that our markets are very fragmented when it comes to telecoms and spectrum, for example. And in many member states, investments are lacking very much behind when it comes to connectivity. Like you said, Honourable Member, 200 billion investments are needed to meet these digital decade targets. So it's crucial that we have that kind of legal framework that encourages investments in this field to make businesses easier, to make Europe competitive, and also, of course, to benefit of our consumers and citizens.
Now for PFE, Pascal Pierre.
Merci, Présidente. Madame la Vice-Présidente.
Thank you, Chairman. Vice President Designate, in the letter mission from the Commission President, we have the usual formula in the EU. You talk about strengthening resilience, the democracy shield, and the threats to the continent. And under the pretext of strengthening the rule of law and the digital transition, you're asked to develop AI and digital technologies will offer opportunities to strengthen the ability to strengthen the law. Vice President Designate, as we say, hell is paved with good intentions. Given that, how will you implement your objectives if it's not just having general storage of data and promising heavier fines against member states trying to defend public and civil liberties?
Thank you very much for this question, Honourable Member. I think in Europe we have a very robust base for all our legislation when it comes, for example, to AI or to DSA, because it's based to our values and democracy in Europe. So we always want to make sure that all our legislation, when it comes to digitalization, that these applications, that they are respecting our core values, our fundamental rights, our democracy, our rule of law principles. And it also comes to our AI regulation, which is based to risk-based approach. So most of the user cases and applications, there is no risks, and we are encouraging everybody to innovate in this area. But then when it comes to AI, there is more risk. For example, if the AI applications are used to that kind of services which has huge impacts to people's lives, then like they are deciding about recruiting people to job, giving place to education, deciding about bank loans, then these applications, they have to meet higher standards, and also they have to be assessed before they are entering into the markets. So I think we have very robust basis for our digital legislation, which is based to our European values, and everybody who is operating and making business in Europe has to respect our values here.
Now for ECR, Carlo Ciccioli.
Signora Virkkunen. Madam Virkkunen, tech sovereignty is part of your portfolio for the EU. Redefining this tech independence is a great challenge to defend us against third countries. Two key issues. Tech sovereignty ought to be developed in line with our security, transparency, and respect for citizens as well. Sovereignty ought to be taken not in the absolute sense, but we ought to look at the cost-benefit aspect of it vis-à-vis other countries. So data and services of a cloud nature are particularly strategic. You've emphasized the importance of international partners. taking into consideration cloud sovereignty and a new policy on this particular front, how do you intend to develop this particular initiative, having trusting partners that you can trust from abroad coming and working together with us on the cloud? How do you intend to achieve this? Thank you.
Thank you very much for this question, honourable member. In the cloud services, we are very dependent on third countries currently, and there's some very big players in this field, and often it's not good also for innovations if some services are in the hands only few players. So that's why it's important that we are also encouraging European innovations in the field of cloud, because then we can have better services also, and of course then we are also de-risking when we have more opportunities in this field. And of course, it's an important part of our own sovereignty also that we have own capacity when it comes to the cloud services. And that is the reason why I'm going to put forward the Cloud and Development Act to boost really investments in Europe's cloud computing capacity. It will be also important for our public services that they are also taking a part to this exercise, because with their public procurement, they can make also big efforts when they are investing to European clouds. And there I will be working very closely with Vice President Séjourné in this field when it comes to this public procurement. So the main reason for that, why we are now so much focusing to cloud, is that we want to give access to AI development for our startups and for our SMEs. We want to make sure that we have also a European market when it comes to the clouds. And also there is environmental aspect, because in the same time we want to also make that kind of criteria that we are investing into the best and most energy efficient solutions here when it comes to the clouds. Because also our ICT sector is using very much energy currently, and we have to find also solutions for that. So there's many reasons behind of this AI Act, and I'm very willing to cooperate very closely with Parliament now when we are developing this idea, if confirmed.
For Renew, Sigrid Fries.
Thank you, and dear Executive Vice President Designate, in your written answers, you commit to de-risk from actors that do not adhere to European values. I welcome that statement, and my question will be short and simple. Do you believe that Chinese hardware or software has a place in any of our critical infrastructure? And taking into consideration that Chinese companies are obliged by law to share any kind of information with their intelligence service, will you make the 5G toolbox legally binding, and will you apply this approach more broadly to other technologies? Thank you.
Thank you very much, honourable member. Cybersecurity has been a field where we have been focusing very much in the European Union during the last years. We were working with many of you during the last term with NIS2 directive, with directive for critical entities, with the Cyber Resilience Act, and with the Solidarity Act, just to mention a few. So we have been discussing and making decisions on a very big package of cyber legislation during the last years. But of course it's not enough if we have the legislation, because it has to be now enforced in the member states, and we also have to have skilled people to do this. It's also one of our challenges that we are lacking very much behind when it comes to cyber experts. But especially we have to also de-risk the communication when it comes to 5G. And this 5G toolbox is our main tool here. And I have to say that I'm not very satisfied when it comes to our critical infrastructure here, because currently it's the case that 42% Europeans who are using 5G, their communication is transmitted via radio equipment from high-risk vendors. So I'm not satisfied at all. So only 12 member states, they have been imposing vendors obligations to de-risk mobile operators, or they have imposed to mobile operators that they have to also de-risk these high-risk vendors. from the infrastructure. So this is something where we have to take now more actions, because I think the member states, they haven't been taking this seriously enough. And on next year, we will have, in the beginning of next year, we will have also the revision of our Cyber Act. And I think this is certainly a place where we also will focus to this. But I will also, if confirmed, to have a discussion on this topic with the member states, because I think they have to take this now seriously.
For the SND, Alex Agios-Saliba.
We have all seen last week how an eccentric billionaire uses global social platform to spread false information, target and profile people using personal data, using addictive algorithms and also commercial spyware to ultimately change public opinion. We know Donald Trump will put the US digital giants first. This means that the EU needs to guarantee a European approach to trustworthy, to ethical digital services that protect people, their rights and our democracies. So my first question, will you stand firm against the US actors when fines will need to be imposed? And how do you see the cooperation with our US counterparts? More than ever, the EU needs also a strong data economy. Your Cloud and AI Development Act will play a crucial role in it. But your initiative remains vague on the interplay with data protection rights. So my second question, can you commit on upholding the robust GDPR requirements, enhancing cybersecurity protection and encryption? Will you also commit to updating the e-privacy rules to complete the EU data protection reform without delay? Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much for this question, honourable member. When it's coming to some online platforms which are not complying with our regulation, we know that Commission has opened procedures against them. And of course, I'm also hoping that they could speed up the processes, because of course it feels that it's taking a very long time, even that the regulation came into the force just 1 year ago. And it's also important in the same time when we want to speed up the processes that the Commission will take actions if the online platforms are not in line with our regulation, with our rules in Europe. We also have to work in a very evidence-based manner. And that's why it often takes also time from the researchers and from the investigators really to make certain that they have a case there. But I will make sure that we will use all the tools we have in our DSA and we will fully enforce it and make sure that everybody who is operating in Europe is respecting our legislation, our rules in Europe. So there is no doubt on that. When it comes to data protection, it's very much the core of our digital rules in Europe. So we want to have high level of privacy and be sure that the people's and citizens' personal data is protected. It's said in the Commission Designate for Rule of Law, Justice in his mission letter that he has to look also that our GDPR, that it's in line with the technological developments. And of course, we have to look that also, especially when we are coming to Data Act. But all the time, GDPR and the privacy of the people, it will be in heart of our digital legislation and the rules, because trust is needed and trust is a key in this area.
For the EPP, Alba Kokolari.
Thank you, Commissioner Designate Henna. I'm impressed to see that we have a candidate who really knows tech and have worked with tech policy. And because digital legislation right now is moving so fast and unable to keep up with the technological developments and protection of citizens' rights. But the amount of new laws in the EU and in the member states have led to overlaps and very high compliance costs, especially for startups and scale-ups. This is hindering innovation and the European economy, as we all see. And that's why we now need a clear legal framework when all of these laws are being implemented. Commissioner designate, Europe's companies need more engineers, not more lawyers trying to navigate in the jungle of bureaucracy. And considering both existing and new proposed laws, like the GDPR, Data Act, AI Act, DMA, DSA, and the Digital Fairness Act, what will you do to remove these overlaps and minimizing the regulatory burden and the bureaucracy so that companies can succeed in Europe?
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. This will be one of my main priorities during next term or this term, if I'm confirmed as the Vice President of the Commission, to really look that we are cutting our red tape, we are cutting our bureaucracy and administrative burden from our SMEs and from our industries. First, what I will ask from my services, if confirmed as a Vice President, to really list all the reporting obligations and all the legislation we have for our industries, and especially when there is some overlapping task, when there is legislation what could be simplified, what could be consolidated, I will do that. I think the first two sectors where we have good possibilities to really look at how we can simplify and be more in the general level in our legislations. It's a Digital Networks Act, which will come, where we are going to review our telecom regulation on next year. And there I'm willing to finally complete a single market when it comes to telecoms, and also look how we can consolidate and simplify the framework we have. It's the oldest part of our digital legislation. I have to say also that most of our digital legislation is from the last 10 years, because before that, really, internet didn't exist, and we didn't have rules. So we have big amount of new rules, and like you said, often we have been working too much in silos, so we should have more general approach, and we should consolidate also our legislation, what we have been doing, what we have been doing in last year. So Digital Networks Act, I think it's giving good opportunity for that. And then also all the cyber legislation. Like I was earlier already listing different initiatives and acts and directives. We have been making decisions during the last years. I think now we have to also have overall look to this cyber security part and how we can consolidate these different legislations.
For Greens, Eva Damian Büselager.
Dear Commissioner Designate, I have two questions. First, on industrial data. The Commission estimates that there is a potential of hundreds of billions of euros if we would be sharing industrial data more. And we clarified some of the commercialization rights for industrial data in the Data Act, but we are still missing large European industrial data marketplaces. So can you commit to set up a competition for industrial marketplaces and give prizes to the 10 best competitors? And second, on talent. By 2050, Europe will be short 44 million workers. 1 in 2 European SMEs identifies shortage of talent as a key issue preventing the scaling up and growth. So can you commit to making it easier for startups and SMEs to hire across EU borders for remote work? And will you work with Mr. Brunner, if he also gets confirmed, to attract international talent with new labor migration schemes? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. And this data topic, it's very crucial for Europe, because now when we want to create our AI continent, we know that a lot of data is needed to train AI. And it's one of our main obstacles that most of our industrial data in Europe, it's not used. During the last term, we were deciding a very big package of data regulation also. We have the Data Governance Act and also Data Act coming into the force. But now we have to really look at where are the obstacles, why the data is not used. And that's why we have to look also a new strategy for that, where we are identifying the obstacles we have, because data is really needed to train AI and to make our continent competitive in this area. And I think this is a very interesting idea from your side about this industrial data market competition, and I'm very willing to also continue discussions on that when we are now preparing our new data strategy. And when it comes to the talents, This is one of our biggest challenges when we speak about our competitiveness and our technological sovereignty, that we really need skilled people to Europe. We are aging population in Europe, and Europe has to be attractive always when it comes to talented people, to digital skills. And we have already some actions they have been taking, like EU talent pool, and also during the last term, Blue Card Directive was also revised. But I think we have to now work very closely with the other commissioners, and especially with the Vice President of Skills, in this area, really look at what kind of more attractive measures we could do. It's very much up to member states nowadays, and that kind of startup visa, it's used. Some member states have it, and this approach. But I think also when we are trying to be attractive for the talented, skilled people, we should have more also European approach here, not only member states acting by their own.
For the EPP, Oliver Schenk.
I would like to continue in German. And ich komme zurück auf ein Thema, was...
I'd like to come back to a topic which I've already heard, which is the semiconductor industry. Perhaps one of the most important technologies on the world. And you think in every single mobile, we have that. It contains these kinds of chips. And we are therefore vulnerable here in Europe. Hundreds of thousands of here in Europe weren't able to be produced. So Europe has reacted with the CHIPS Act. And there's some successful projects, such as in Germany, France, and Italy, and many projects that don't work because we've seen that it's not the money, it's the cluster and the network. Research and supply chains. What kind of proposals can we expect so that we can see more investment, so that we're able to achieve the target, 20% of global production here in Europe? How we can achieve that goal? What kind of proposals?
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I agree that this ships sector is maybe the most urgent sector now when we speak about our technological sovereignty, because chips are really needed in all our technologies, and we are so dependent on third countries in this sector. We have been successful, I see, with the CHIPS Act, where Parliament was taking very rapid actions when the Commission was proposing this CHIPS Act, and you were negotiating this in super fast time. In the first 1 year, we can see that it has been successful because 80 billion of investments has been done for the semiconductors production in Europe, and also we have pilot lines in Europe where we are bringing together research and industrial players across the supply chain, from materials through equipment to production and packaging. But now we have to take next step on this also. I think it's important that we are now monitoring the success of this first CHIPS Act and looking what we could do better and what are the next steps. And here I'm very willing, if confirmed as a Vice President, also to work closely with Parliament, because you have very close contacts also to your regions and your industries, and I'm very willing to hear also your feedback that what could be done. But my main idea is that we have to follow with the CHIPS Act to strengthen and boost especially design and manufacturing now of chips in EU, and also working towards the creating of a semiconductors ecosystem for very advanced chips, because this is now the missing part of our sectors, really, that very advanced chips has to be also produced in Europe. And like I already said before, I'm also planning to also add Quantum Chips Act to this package. But here I'm very willing to work very closely with the members of Parliament and hearing your feedback also, what you say that we could done and what we should do now as a next step in this urgent area.
Now for the left, Gaetano Pedulla.
Commissioner designate, a couple of days ago in Italy, there was a huge alarm involving illicit access to the data of millions of people. That led to a high level of alert for banks, the issue of security. 123 million from the RFF have been spent on this particular front. The Court of Auditors has said that the plans for cyber defense in Italy are limited in that a simple analysis of the situation, but they're not bolstering security. So as far as the use of European resources for protection of protecting bank data, it's extremely important that it not be wasted. Major investments have to be made for digital security in Europe. Don't you feel that that ought to be done in the NSE and ASC too as well? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Important topic for all of us. We want to make sure that our data is safe and we can be secured, and all our information also in the digital world. And that's why GDPR is so crucial part of all our legislation in Europe. And that's why we have been also paying so much attention to cybersecurity during the last years. But the legislation, it's not enough, because it has to be also enforced, and we have to have also expertise for that. So I very much agree that we have to invest much more to cybersecurity, and not only the technologies, but also the expertise in this field. We need that. We are lacking hundreds of thousands of experts in this field, and that's why I'm very much encouraging also the member states to pay attention for the skills part. Here I will work also very closely with the Commissioner of Skills to look at how we can encourage investments to skills and cybersecurity, also when it comes to expertise. Many member states also, they were planning that they are using quite much resources of Recovery and Resilience Fund to digitalization, and often skills part was the one to where they are focusing. So we are also expecting results of this part. But this was a very important topic you were raising, and certainly will be one of our main priorities now to make sure that the cybersecurity is well taken into account in all the member states. And we are also sharing information in this field and learning from best practices.
Now for the S&D Aero, Henna Virkkunen.
Nopeat verkkoyhteydet ovat välttämättömiä.
High-speed network connections are essential for ordinary citizens and business, and that's an important part of our security of supply. These high-speed 5G and fiber optic networks are not available these days to all Europeans. There's a particular problem in sparsely populated countries and rural regions. Even in high-speed connections, there's a problem in terms of who decides who rapid connections are offered to. A few American or Chinese billionaires shouldn't control the future of communications, the IT networks, or the digital infrastructure in Europe. Commissioner Designate, what practical actions can you promise to this Parliament to guarantee high-speed connections throughout the EU? And do you promise that accelerating investments will not in practice lead to restrictions on the openness of the Internet? Do you commit to Internet equality, that is to say net neutrality? Thank you, Honourable Member. This is a very important topic and one of the biggest challenges in Europe. If we look at people's connections in Europe, we are lagging behind. We should invest 200 billion more in network connections so that by 2030 we achieve our objectives in the Digital Decade programme. This means that at the current speed we won't reach that. We have two important means by which we can speed up investments. First of all is to reform legislation. Next year we'll be reforming the Digital Networks Act, and we should remove unnecessary barriers so that we can speed up investments throughout the EU. There are big differences between the member states, but the other thing is financing. At the moment, only 64% of Europeans have rapid fiber optic networks, as you said, in the rural areas. it's even worse. It's only 50% that have high-speed connections. It makes it difficult for businesses and farmers in the countryside, and also for ordinary people. So it's a basic service. So it's important that we look at all the financing instruments that we can use here. When we talk about sparsely populated regions, we have cohesion financing. Many countries will use RRF financing to speed up connections, in particular when it comes to 5G and the Connecting Europe facility can be used too. So we have to look at the situation in each country. We will update the Digital Decade programme. We will gather data from each member state to see where we are and to see how we can speed things up. As you said, it's important that the internet is available to everybody. It also means changes, but net neutrality has been an important principle in Europe.
For the PFE, Ernő Schaller-Barros.
Commissioner designate, you have been appointed to oversee an extensive portfolio involving regulation of the digital single market and social media. This includes combating disinformation, unethical online practices like dark patterns, influencer marketing, and addictive digital design. However, considering the Commission's selective approach till now to issues within the Digital Single Market Act, often disregarding concerns from conservative voices as well, how do you justify the Commission's lack of balance in regulating online content? Why has the Commission chosen to target platforms like X under Elon Musk's management? Why consistently ignoring similar practices in left-leaning media platforms? How can the European Commission claim impartiality while seeming to stifle free speech from certain ideological perspectives? And how would you ensure the Commission adopts a more neutral stance going forward? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this question. And of course, it's most important principle here that everybody is having the same rules in Europe who is under the scope of the regulation. So there is some numbers and number of users which are making some online platforms very large online platforms, and then there is stricter rules for them because they are also having more power than smaller operators in Europe. So those very big online platforms who are meeting these targets, they are under remit of Commission, and there is also more requirements for them because they have to assess that they are not posing systematic risk, and it comes from that they have so much economical and societal power, so they have to also behave very responsible way, and they have to have practices on place. In the same time, when Parliament was negotiating with the member states on this legislation, Parliament wanted also to make sure and be sure all the time that freedom of speech is respected here, and the illegal products and content has to be taken down. We are not, everything what is illegal offline is also illegal online. But then also the online platforms, they have their own terms and conditions, and they have also the responsibility to look that they are not posing systematic risks, and that's why they are often hiding also some legal content. For example, if they see that there can be negative impacts to society for people's well-being, for example, and it's posing risks. Or, for example, if they are spreading disinformation, this is harming very much democracies, and it can pose systematic risks. But it's important also for them that they find online platforms, they are deciding about the practices in this field, that they find the right balance here, that there is not over-removals of the content as well.
For ECR, Renis Posnaks.
Labvakar, es latviski runāšu.
Good evening, I will speak Latvian. Dear Chair, Executive Vice President Designate, thank you for your patience and the replies you have provided to our questions. I am representing Latvia, and for this reason I will touch upon the section of security and not so much concerning the digital world. And of course, this war in Europe has highlighted many of our weak spots that we have to resolve soon enough. And I'm glad that you are from Finland. It is almost the only country in Europe that has never stopped preparing for the war. And I hope that your experience will be useful in Europe. As regards the competitiveness of Europe, we have many internal challenges, not only external ones. And if we are talking about the concept of made in Europe, there are regions, especially at the border of Russia, that have lost their competitiveness because of their location. And what is your view regarding this? What solutions do you see? How could we compensate for this? How could we level out this internal competitiveness?
Thank you very much for your question. And this is totally right, what you said about the eastern border of Europe. Because of the Russia's war of aggression towards Ukraine, we have closed the eastern border, as we know, and it has had impacts to our logistics, for our SMEs, for our industries, for people's everyday life, because often it was based, especially when it comes to eastern border, people who were living nearby the borderline, there was, of course, a lot of activities, cross-border activities and industries and businesses, and now we have stopped them because we don't want to work with Russia anymore, and we have been also setting sanctions against them because they are attacking Ukrainians who we are protecting and supporting very much, and as long as it takes. But now we have to also look the eastern border and the regions in there, that how they could also build to their strengths, how they could find new businesses, how the people could continue their lives. Because it's also an important part of our security that the people can live in these areas, because it would be dangerous if the people have to move out from these eastern border areas. It's important part of our security, that there is industries, SMEs, there is civilization in our eastern border. And I'm very happy that it's also stated in the mission letter of Vice President designate Fitto that he has to pay special attention for our eastern borders now in regional politics, how to support these regions who has been affected of the close of the eastern border, and especially elements has to be provided for these areas. And I'm also very willing to work very closely with the other commissioners and of course also with the regions to find out how in the European level we could support these regions, because it's also European questions. It's not only responsible of these member states and regions, because this is security of whole Europe, and those regions who have been affected of these consequences of the war, we have to support them together.
For Renew, Anna-Maja Henriksson.
Thank you, Chair. Honourable Vice President designate Henna. It's quite clear that we must do more to strengthen Europe's defence and security. And in your mission letter, you are asked to work towards a European Defence Union that not only strengthens defence, but also enhances the competitiveness of our defence industry. How do you plan to work together with Commissioner-designate Kubilius to create a single market for defence that strengthens the competitiveness of the European defence industry, strengthens the defence of member states, and helps us supply Ukraine with the material it needs? And how will you ensure that small and medium-sized enterprises have possibilities to operate in a single market for defence? And finally, how will you take in account the recommendations in President Niinistö's report in your work? Miten, arvoisa...
How, Commissioner-designate, how will you promote competitiveness in the European defence industry through legislation?
Question. Defence Union and our defence industry and building up our defence industry will be one of the main priorities for the Commission, and it's also one of the top priorities now in the next months if we are confirmed. If I'm confirmed, I will be working closely with the Commissioner for Defence and Space in this sector and with the High Representative Vice President Kallas as well, because Commission is preparing a white paper on defence, and there we will set the ambitious and also the targets for the next years, what we want to deliver in Europe. We don't have to start from scratch. Like you said, we have now Niinistö report, where this is a very good basis for that how we should be better prepared for the worst case scenarios in Europe. And also we have a defense industrial strategy from last spring, and I think we can build on both those. But of course, when it comes to defense, also this is a competence of member states, and there we have to also have very close coordination with the member states, because they have to now do also their part. We know that one of the most important actions the member states could do is something that European Parliament has been very much encouraging the member states during all these years, to meet their 2% target, to invest at least 2% of their GDP to defense. It would help a lot to our industries also, because then it would be extra 60 billion every year to our defense. And we have also set the target in our industrial report that in 2030, member states, they should buy 50% of their military equipment from the European markets. And of course, it means that we have to also have very high quality and much more effective and stronger defense industry than we have today. So we need short-term actions now, ramp up the industry and investments there, but also we need investments to research and development to be competitive in this area.
For the EPP, Henrik Dahl.
Thank you, Chair. AI is often discussed with a focus on the downside, for instance, inadequate data protection or inadequate protection of vulnerable groups. But there is also an upside. In areas such as healthcare or tax administration or public service delivery, AI could potentially streamline processes, reduce errors, and improve decision-making. But balancing upsides and downsides presents a challenge to the EU. There is much to be gained by AI in terms of efficiency and innovation, but there is also the question of good governance. Given the EU's approach to AI, what steps will the Commission take to ensure that public sector bodies can adopt AI effectively and safely, and how will the Commission strike a balance between innovation and responsible oversight to guarantee an ethical deployment of AI in public services? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. And here you are very right that AI is giving a lot of opportunities for our public services, but we have to also put it right and look also the risks there and be also sure that we are embracing AI a responsible way. And that's why I think it's very good basis now that we have also our AI Act, because it's a risk-based act, and there we are also setting standards when it comes to that kind of services, what often we have in public sector, where also the services, they have impact to people's everyday life. When the decisions are making, people are recruited by AI, or for example, social benefits are decided by AI. Then it's also, and we know examples when these systems has been tested, that there has been also discrimination of AI. So the data, how it's used, it plays an important role here, and that's why we have this risk-based approach. So when AI is used to that kind of applications, especially what we have in public sector, of course also in private sector, then they have to meet the applications higher standards, and they have to be assessment before they are entering into the markets, and also there has to be also a dispute or complaining elements for the citizens who have been, or if the AI has been making decisions on their services. So I think this is good basis that we have AI Act now, and now we have to also encourage the public sector to use AI. And that's why I will propose Apply AI strategy to really actively support the uptake of AI, not only in private sector, but also in public sector, including those important segments like you met about healthcare and also smart cities. So I think we should be without fear here, and that's why I want to support very much the uptake of AI in public sector, because we have AI Act where we can base on these new applications. And currently we have AI Office in the Commission who is, and they are preparing guidelines also on this topic.
For the S&D, Elena Sancho Murillo.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Commissioner Designate, improving digital skills is essential for an inclusive digital transition. The objectives of the digital decade also mean we need 100% to digitalise services, including electronic health and the digital identity by 2030. However, the digital gap persists, with more than 40% of Europeans who are not able to use necessary digital tools to access online services, and the gender gap, as you've already said, is still a problem. What kind of initiatives do you propose to promote education and training in the digital sector, focusing on disadvantaged groups so they do not fall behind? And how can you ensure that digital tools do not substitute in-person services, and what measures will you propose to deal with the issue for women and the deficit of talent in cybersecurity? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Very important question when we speak about digitalization and technologies, because I want that we have an approach that nobody isn't left behind here. But now when we look at our digital decade targets, we have set the target that in 2030, 80% of our citizens, they should have basic digital skills. And we know that currently it's the case that only 55% of our citizens, they have digital skills. And of course, it's very difficult for the people who are in the job markets, for example, because in the most of the jobs nowadays, digital skills are needed, and especially now when we want to boost more technologies and digitalization in all areas. And also accessing to public services, like you said, also digital skills are needed here. So also for the elderly people, it's important that we can also update their skills here. And of course, this is very much competence of member states also to organize it, but we have to also monitor the situation in the EU level, that where we have the obstacles in the member states to access to this kind of education and upskilling. There is many organizations are needed here, also educational institutions, of course, but it's very much up to member states how they have organized this. I'm very happy that many member states were planning that they are using recovery and resilience funds for the updating also the skills of people, and now we are looking forward to see also the results. But more actions are needed now here, that if we want to meet, and I think we want to meet this target we have set in 2030. Also, when it comes to ICT specialists, we are lagging very much behind, and especially like you were underlining, the role of girls and women here, because we have to also more encourage girls and women to ICT sectors. Otherwise, because we know that this is a very attractive sector, if girls and women are outside of this, of course it will have impacts to their job career, for their salaries, for their pensions in the later on. So very important part here, taking all the potential we have in Europe, using all the potential, and this will be my high priority. Coming also from my background as a Minister of Education, I'm always putting very much emphasis to education and skills, because it's basis for everything, for our technologies, digitalization, competitiveness, for our democracy also.
Please, let's all stick to the time. Thank you so much. Now, Paulius Saudargas from the EPP.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dear Vice President Designate, let's continue about AI. I was really glad to hear that you want Europe to be an AI continent. But alas, Europe looks more like an AI uninhabited island still. Artificial intelligence is sparking a global revolution, yet Europe lags behind the United States and even China in the race for technological advancement. AI will play a key role in driving progress across sectors. Europe must focus on developing robust AI models and integrating AI into existing industries. High-tech and AI competitiveness are not just economic priorities. They're matters of security and also will be crucial in defense sector. Also, it will have a significant social impact on our labor market and culture. So it will be invaluable to hear more about the Commission's plans for AI, including the AI Research Council, the development of European Centre of Excellence and Research for AI and other initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Yes, and maybe it sounds a little bit bureaucratic when I'm listing all these actions we are going to take to achieve this AI continent. So AI Factories Initiative, Apply AI Strategy, and EU Cloud and AI Development Act. But all these parts are needed, really, to boost investments and innovations in this area. And the first will be this AI Factories Initiative, which will be one of my 100 days initiatives. And just last week, the first 7 proposals for AI factories were submitted, on which 50 member states cooperated in this. And these AI factories are needed because the idea is that we are giving access to supercomputing for industry startups and researchers, because it's really bottleneck now for our SMEs, for our researchers, that they don't have the computing capacity what they need. So now they will have, and we will also upgrade our supercomputers. So around supercomputers, we will have these AI factories, and also data is, of course, connected to that. So that's why we have to now also look that we are removing the obstacles to use of industrial data. And then this Apply AI strategy, it's also an important part of our continent because we want to make sure that our public services, that they will use AI, but also key sectors, like you mentioned, automotive, robotics, and pharma, that they can make everything out of AI. So that's why we want to also promote future-proof transformation here. And like you said, and then earlier we were also already discussing about this EU Cloud and AI Development Act, which is also an important part of this package. But like you said, we are also establishing a research council together with the Commissioner for Innovations. And the idea behind this is that we want to also be an attractive place for the best researchers in the world in AI. So we want to pool also the best researchers here to make sure that we have very high quality of science also in this field.
Now for the non-attached, Diana Ianovici Shosha-Wacha.
Mulțumesc frumos. Voi vorbi în limba română. Am văzut aici că...
Thank you very much. I'll speak Romanian. I see that you mentioned technology 6G a lot, but I think one important thing is forgotten. We have forgotten to speak about man, because I think that man has to be the center of our concerns. We have talked very little about rights and citizen liberties. And as a lawyer, when I look at what happened in Romania and Europe during the pandemic, because it was not a pandemic, when only the officials were right and specialists were seen as being against the official version of things, I ask you, how will you be able to manage? Because I see you only think about sanctions, about closing accounts, about violating the freedom of speech, but I don't think you have asked the citizens what they want, and I don't think that citizens want a dictatorship. And this comes from a Romanian woman who has lived through communist dictatorship. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this question. I'm very committed to European values, and European Union, as we know, is founded on the values of respect for human dignity, freedom, democracy, equality, the rule of law and respect for human rights, including the rights of persons belonging to minorities, as laid down. So I think this is a very important basis for our legislation, all our actions we are doing. This is also the reason why the member states, they have joined European Union, that they are sharing these same values. And I think rule of law principle is especially important here in the cases you mentioned here, that we have to have the same rules and equality for everybody in Europe, and people can trust to that. So I will work, if confirmed as a commissioner, in the most transparent way and to make sure that everybody is having equal treatment in the European Union.
Now for the PFE, Virginie Joron.
Thank you. Madam, democracy has spoken. The Americans have re-elected Trump. The last 5 years, we've been trying to protect citizens from democracy, and trying to protect people from the democracy of Donald Trump. And there's been a lot of talk about disinformation, and we've talked about the confrontation between Thierry Breton and Elon Musk. Is that now over now? Madam, you are Finnish, and Finland is a well-managed, free country. Do you know that the media is subsidized? Francois is an independent of site, has lost its license because of what he said about internet, about COVID vaccines. Will you be a commissioner, will defend freedom of expression and the freedom of the medium? What is your position, finally, on the European certification for cloud services? Thank you.
Thank you very much, honourable member. Freedom of speech is one of our fundamental rights in Europe, and I will protect that in all my actions. Of course, freedom of speech doesn't mean that we can say whatever and we can spread, for example, hate speech or disinformation or violate people's privacy, for example, online. There's also a limit that what is freedom of speech, but I will support this as a fundamental right in all my actions. And also we are preparing Democracy Shield together with the Commissioner for Democracy and Justice and Rule of Law. And one of the important elements there is also strengthen the elements of freedom of speech. So I can promise that in all my actions I'm supporting this important principle.
For the SND, Christel Schaldemose.
Dear Commissioner Designate Virkkunen, dear Henna, I'm happy that we speak so much about the Digital Services Act tonight. It is a very important legislation, and you know it because we were negotiating it together. However, I have a couple of questions in that respect. One, we have talked about enforcement and the need of it, but we haven't talked so much about resources. Will you be able to find more resources, more staff, etc.? Because I think that's important in order to make sure that we can deliver a little more speedy enforcement than we have today. The second thing is that your mandate will, if confirmed, last 5 years. And are you willing to commit to making suggestions for improvement of the regulations in case they are not protecting consumers enough, for instance, age verification for kids, or making marketplaces, online marketplaces, liable for products if they're not complying with the rules? Are you willing to commit to that because you have 5 years? Thanks.
Thank you very much, honourable member, for this very important question. And I checked today the resources also from the Commission on this topic, because now we have to, it's true, when we speak about DSA and DMA, we are working in these topics with the world's most or the biggest companies. So we also have to have resources in our side then when we are making sure that these big companies, that they are complying with our rules, they are respecting all our rules. So currently in the DSA enforcement team, there's about 100 staff members in the European Commission, and by end of next year it will double, reaching 200. So, and I will make sure that we have enough resources there. There's researchers and lawyers especially needed, because we want to make sure that we have also strong basis all to our actions, and also researchers are needed, especially because addictive algorithms, for example, has mentioned many times today, and it's also very technical work they have to do, the researchers, to really look how these are working. And in DMA enforcement team, there is about 45 people now working, and there we are working together with Vice President Designate Ribera, because it's a joint action, and we have joint team there. In DMA. So it's a competition policy, but also DG Connect is working in this topic. And also AI office is currently put to the place, and there is currently 70 staff members, but on next year it's supposed to be 130. So these are also needing a lot of resources and expertise when we speak about these very important legislations here. And when it comes to DSA and DMA, now I'm fully committed to fully enforce all the legislations and use all the tools we have there maximally. But then, of course, we have to look in next years. Technologies are developing very, very fast, that we know here. Our legislation process is often very slowly, so we have to look also that if there is loopholes and if we have to come with a stronger regulation, we will do that.
Thank you. Now for the EPP, Kamila Gasiuk-Pihovic.
Do roku 2000.
Until 2025, or by 2025, we will have around 30% of people who will be older than 65 years. If you look at the FRA report, you will see that we have a gap. We have discrimination against elderly people who cannot cope with modern technologies. Only 20% of elderly people in 2065 will have at least basic digital literacy. In Poland, only 10%. So we'll have a lot of elderly people who will not cope with digital technologies. Our society is aging. We have a lot of digitization underway, but elderly people are excluded from this. How are you going to make internet a safer space for elderly people?
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Very important topic. We were already earlier discussing about this skills part, which is crucial to us to meet our digital decade targets, but also to make sure that Europe is competitive in the future and the people that they have access to public services. And this is certainly an area where we have to pay more attention with the member states. And I also, in the same time, when I'm very much also boosting and supporting, of course, all the digital services, technical solutions, it's important that we have also alternative services, because everybody can't use digital services. So it's also important to take care of that, and especially when we speak about elderly people. But in the same time, I'm also encouraging member states, and I will work closely with Vice Presidents of Skills also in this area, that we have to have also possibilities for elderly people to update their skills. And we need also support of the educational institutions here and different organizations who can work together with member states, because also digitalization can give a lot of benefit also for the elderly people to be in contact to their families and relatives and so on. So there shouldn't be too high obstacles also in this field. But I'm very happy that so many members here are paying special attention for the skills, because it's really in heart of our digital transformation. We want to make sure that nobody isn't left behind.
Now for the Greens, Eva Renier van Lanschot.
Thank you. Dear Mrs. Virkkunen, I'm right here. Hi. We want an innovative and climate-neutral economy. And at the moment, we are on the brink of an unprecedented and exponential surge in technological infrastructure. And I must say I share your vision for the urgent development of Europe's tech ecosystems, but we cannot ignore one critical reality. and that is the energy consumption of these new AI factories and data centers. It's enormous. In fact, their energy demand is projected to triple by 2030, and that's basically tomorrow, so we must address this challenge head on. And so, to ensure we stay on course towards a climate-neutral economy, could you confirm investments will be tied to clear conditionalities, such as net zero climate goals, and can you commit that these considerations will be part of the AI and Cloud Development Act?
Thank you very much for this question, honourable members. And this is one of my priorities also to make sure that we can meet our climate goals. Commission is very committed to that, as well as European Parliament and me, myself, to make sure that we can meet climate goals in an effective way, to make sure that it's also economical and socially sustainable what we are doing. And like you said, ICT sector is playing a very important role here because of technologies and digitalization, we can do many services and actions much more efficient way than we did before. But in the same time, the other side of the coin is that this is very energy consuming. So I think we have to take now actions towards that we will set also requirements when we are making investments, that the best available technologies are used here to make sure that these are very energy efficient investments we are doing. I think one important step was taken forward when in Energy Efficiency Directive we were including reporting scheme for data center sustainability. So we have it there in Energy Efficiency Directive, and this data, what we are collecting now, it will also help us to decide about the future measures. For example, labeling, or also these minimum sustainable requirements we could set in the future. And in the same time, now when we are planning to invest more to clouds and quantum computing, it's also good to remember that these are very energy efficient solutions also. So when we are using these better technologies, we are also saving energy. So now it's important that we are really also monitoring not only the footprint of ICT technologies, but also the handprint in the same time. So we can find that what is always the most energy efficient solution we can take. But this will be certainly important priority to me, because I'm very committed to our climate goals also.
Now Stefano Cavedagna.
Grazie, Commissario. Al suo mandato.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. I'm right here, says the speaker. So you have to compare and look at dangerous online activities which may affect consumers and their choices. Aggressive marketing, in other words, through social media, with consequences on users, young users as well, who are extremely affected by all of this. So we see improper practices by different digital agents out there in third countries with very, very detrimental effects for users. So how do you intend to deal with this particular issue? In other words, guarantee effective protection for European citizens and for the most vulnerable in particular. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this question. I think we are in good position now in that way that we have a very strong tool here, Digital Service Act, and now we have to fully enforce it and use all the tools we have there. We know that Commission is going on all the time, dialogue with these online platforms, but they have also opened investigations and also procedures against these online platforms, especially looking the right of minors, because it's said in our legislation that online platforms, they have to secure that our minors, that they have the highest level of safety, security and privacy in online platforms. And like you said, many of our minors, they are using very much time on online platforms. Young people who are under 23 years, so not all of them minors, but they are using more than, or 85% of them are using social media, and they are using more than 7 hours per day on online platforms. So it's quite much screen time. And there is also behind of that is also the addicting algorithms many of the online platforms are using. So this is currently a case. The Commission is now investigating these addicting algorithms, because of course it's part of the online platforms' business logic also that they try to get people to use so much time as possible on online platforms. But it's not good for our health and mental health, and that is also the reason why the Commission is carrying out inquiry about the impacts of social media also. But then it comes also to the content, that we have to also make sure that online platforms are taking their responsibilities here, that they make sure that the content what is shown to online for our minors, that it's also fit for their age. And that is also something they are not doing well enough now.
Michael McNamara.
Madam Commissioner Designate, I'd like to just continue on the theme of AI. How will you ensure that the European Union is the locus of innovation and competition in the development of AI models, including but not only narrower specific models, and that development is supported or at least facilitated, and that existing foundation models don't come to stifle innovation? How will you consider using Article 19 of the DMA in that regard? How will you tackle the potential subversion of the protections afforded in the AI Act to citizens by member states availing of the national security exemption to acquire or utilise facial recognition and biometric databases accumulated by the untargeted scraping of the internet? And will you work with the Parliament to ensure that the EU AI office within the Commission will effectively implement and enforce the AI Act in a transparent manner?
Thank you very much for this question. And we are in a crucial time with the AI Act currently, because it's now coming into the force, and in February, the first part, when we are prohibiting, when we are banning some user cases, it's come into the force. So it means that those applications where we see that it's unacceptable risk, they will be banned. And currently, AI Office is preparing guidelines for that. And of course, we have to monitor now very closely also the developments in the member states, like you said, about the security part of that, because what we wanted to achieve as co-legislators, the Parliament and the member states, we wanted to make sure that we are prohibiting that kind of processing of biometric data, and this is also classified all the remote biometric identification systems, for example, as a high risk, and this requires them to comply with the very strict requirements now. So we have to look very carefully and monitor the developments in member states, because in the same time, I want to very much encourage all the industry, SMEs, startups, public sector to use AI, because there's big potential, and most of the cases there is no risk. But then we have clearly identified some of the user cases, some of the applications that there is so high risk that we want to ban them totally in Europe. And then we have also the high risk applications where we have higher standards, and special assessment has to be done before they are entering to the markets. But here I'm very willing to work now closely, if confirmed, as a Vice President, with our LIBE committee and with our IMCOM committee, who have been setting this AI working group together and following the implementation closely currently.
Arno Bausamer.
Ja, sehr geehrte Frau Virkkunen.
Thank you very much, Ms. Virkkunen. The failed German government of SPD, FDP and the Greens have shown what happens when we see polarization and blockades. Ms. Virkkunen, you have a list of requirements from Ms. von der Leyen. It's very damaging when somebody leads right from the top. How will you distinguish yourself from Ms. von der Leyen when those differences are to the benefit of the European people? How, as a former journalist, do you assess Ms. von der Leyen's behaviour in relation with the Pfizer documents and what happened there? And despite questions from the Ombudsman and the legal process that has been asking for more information, and how can you seriously show that you're in favour of transparency when you're in a commission where the president is intransparent?
Thank you very much for this question, honourable member. Personally, I can say that I have very high respect to Ursula von der Leyen as a person, and also to work she has been doing during the last 5 years. And she also had very strong support from the European Parliament in July, and it was based to her guidelines she was publishing, and that's why the Commission programme is very much based on these guidelines, because European Parliament were supporting these initiatives she was publishing in July. We have all reserved our mission letters from President von der Leyen, and these are all very much based also to those guidelines. So I'm very willing to work together with the colleague if confirmed, and as von der Leyen has said many times and stated very clearly, we will work as colleagues, and the whole college will take all the decisions together. So I'm very much looking forward, of course, working with all the commissioners, but also with the European Parliament, because you were supporting also von der Leyen and her guidelines, and our programme will be based on those guidelines.
And now the last in this round, Mark Botenga.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Commissioner Designate. I'm very concerned about a number of dependencies we have. Cloud services are obviously one of them. In your written answers, you insist a lot on the fact that we need to stay open to third-party providers or third country providers. Now, on the one hand, I get this because of the delay and the gap there is between us and others. On the other hand, we need to massively invest in this. And here the idea of the Euro stack, of the digital public infrastructure, you've said you look upon that favorably, which is great. But, you know, do you have any timeline, any budget, any estimations on how we're going to get there, when we're going to get there? Because it is urgent, especially if you see what's ongoing in the United States. And in regard to AI, a question on how to avoid that the money we're going to put into this is just going to reinforce existing concentrations of power, existing concentrations of corporations that already dominate this market. How to break that open? Thank you.
Thank you very much for this question. And it's sure that it will cost a lot, these investments what are needed in Europe, but it's also costing a lot if we are not doing these investments, if we are becoming more and more dependent on third countries. We have to build up our own capacity in the critical fields. In the same time, when we need also like-minded partners all over the world, because we can't produce everything ourselves. And already now we know that many targets we have set, for example, in the chips, it will be very, very challenging for us, because in the same time, also the market is growing very, very fast, and the need for these chips as well. So we have to produce 4 times so much than now to also meet the 20% target we have set there. So It will cost, but I think it's important part of our economy, our sovereignty, that we have also our own capacity in all these digital fields. And like you said, we should avoid monopolies in the digital world. And of course, now we have to also look very carefully DMA, Digital Markets Act, and look that there is not becoming a closed ecosystem, that they are not, that they are hindering innovations. That is one of the main reasons why we have DMA. We want to make sure that also European innovations can be encouraged, and that's why we have to make sure that very big players, they are not abusing their market dominance.
Thank you. So we have just finished the second round. We are 12 minutes behind the schedule, so I give the floor now to invited committees. The first is Javier Sarsalejos, for the chair of LIBE.
Thank you, Chair. Executive Vice President-designate Mrs. Virkkunen. Your mission statement calls to continue working on the implementation of the Pact on Asylum and Migration and on strengthening our internal security. On behalf of the LIBE Committee, let me ask you, will you commit to keeping the strategic agenda focused on the full implementation of the Pact and to involving the Parliament in such implementation? With the increase of hybrid threats, what actions do you envisage to protect EU external borders while respecting union law and international obligation? And what role do you see for the democracy shield in tackling such hybrid warfare, while at the same time ensuring the protection of the right to freedom of expression and information as enshrined in the Charter? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chair of LIBE Committee. Yes, implementing the Pact on Migration and Asylum is a priority to me. I know how challenging it was to find agreement on this package, and I think it's a great achievement from the European Parliament and from the co-legislators that we found agreement. So now we have to implement this. So it's also at the same time very important that when we are implementing this package, that we are creating safe and legal pathways for people to Europe. And the European Parliament will be informed on the state of play every 6 months, and the Commissioner can provide European Parliament, of course, updates also more often. So here I will work very closely with the Commissioner for Migration and Internal Security, Magnus Brunner, in this field. And also we have to find a new and common approach for the returns. As we know, it's a missing piece of this package, and the current directive is quite old. But anyway, before the return legislation, also we know that member states, they could take more actions also here and be more active also when it comes to returns. There is also big differences between member states in these areas. And one of the important initiatives also will be this democracy shield. There we will be working very closely with the Commissioner for Rule of Law and Justice, Michael McGrath. And special areas where we will focus will be the electoral interference, so take care that this is addressed, and also media freedom. And also I'm very much paying attention to reinforcing the societal resilience of our people. It's often forgotten, but when we speak about democracy, the role of people and their resilience is crucial here.
Jan Kierczuk, the chair of URI committee.
Thank you, dear Chair. Mrs. Virkkunen, at the World Intellectual Property Organization, the latest topics discussed was possible copyright protection of the artificial intelligence generated content in line with the human-centric approach. So the Legal Affairs Committee would like to know how you see the next 5 years in this regard. Should the EU focus on supporting targeted actions in this area, such as facilitating the conclusion of licenses between right holders and artificial intelligence companies? And if yes, how? Or should the EU rather continue to take the lead and take a novel approach to copyright and generative artificial intelligence? Thank you.
Thank you very much for this question, Mr. Chair of Juri Committee. And this is a very challenging one when we speak about that how will be the developments we will be on next 5 years when it comes to AI, because we can see that it's developing very, very fast. So we have to carefully now follow the developments and monitor the situation. We have, of course, the existing balanced system of rules where we have text and data mining exceptions. It's in the Copyright Directive and also in the AI Act. So it should be fully implemented here. And we know that there is also possibility to opt out for the right holders and for the providers of general purpose AI models to also identify and respect this opt-out. But also in the same time, I would like to encourage also the stakeholders to find also agreement here. And that's why I was mentioning, for example, the licensing solution, because I want to make sure also that our creative sector, that they are also compensated in a fair way. And this data is also needed to train AI, as we know, but in the same time, nobody shouldn't use the other one's work and make business out of that without the compensation. So I think we have to look also at the copyright rules now when we see that AI is developing very, very fast. In fact, we know that the Copyright Directive will be evaluated in 2026. And I think that there we have to consider that what new improvements are needed now when we look at technological developments to make sure that the right holders' rights and creative sector rights are respected here, and they will have also fair remuneration when their work is used. So here I'm very willing to work very closely, if confirmed, with our Juri Committee to really elaborate the possible solutions we have here to find a balanced outcome.
Thank you. And now I give the floor Marie-Agnes Strack-Zimmermann, the chair of SEDE subcommittee.
Vielen Dank.
Thank you very much. I'll speak German. Dear Henna, Europe is in critical area, for example, AI and in defense. We are dependent on foreign abilities. I have 3 questions. How do we make sure that with the support of the European Investment Bank, we can make sure that European companies have the most modern and can deliver the most modern defence equipment? Secondly, how will the European Defence Fund and the Defence Equity Facility ensure cooperation between the private and public sectors so that European companies can be competitive worldwide? Thirdly, what are the concrete steps that you will take so that our dependency on suppliers from third countries can be reduced and that our ecosystem can be strengthened and that regulatory and financial barriers can be removed to achieve full integration of these innovations in our defence systems, as is also stated in the Draghi report? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chair of our SEDE committee. This is one of the main topics now during the next months to make sure that when we are preparing our defence white paper together with the High Representative Vice President Kallas and with Commission Vice President Designate and also Commission Designate Gublius for Defence and Space Commission Designate, that we will set ambitious there and the targets that how our defense industry will look like in Europe in the coming years. And funding is needed from many sources, as you mentioned already. I think the member states, they will be, of course, important source also in the future, because most of the funding is coming from the member states, and all the member states are not meeting, those who are members of NATO, they are not meeting the NATO target, 2%. and some are investing even much more. So I think this is one of the first priorities, to really encourage member states to spend more to industrial investments in defense sector. But then also we need these European funds, like you mentioned, especially when we have our common projects, and we are planning to also identify those common projects now during the work we are going to do with the defense white paper. Often it's mentioned that, for example, cybersecurity would be one of the fields, and also air shield. So there we need also European funding for that from our budget, and especially we need from our European funding from our EU budget when it comes to research and development, because it's really needed to make sure that we are also competitive in this sector. But especially we have to also now work much more closer with EIB. I already was speaking with the EIB president about this bank's lending policy, because we know that 40 member states, they were sending a letter during the spring that also the lending policy should be changed in EIB. And I'm very much in encouraging also EIB to change their lending policy, that they could also better support our private-public investments in this sector, and we could also leverage the funding. And I'm willing to continue these discussions if I'm confirmed.
Emma Rafovic, the Vice Chair of CULT Committee.
Bonsoir, Monsieur le...
Good evening, Chairman, Commissioner Designate. I have the honour today to speak to you on behalf of the CULT Committee. How do you plan to strengthen the European regulatory framework to protect journalists and artists more, such as directors or musicians, and supporting them in the digital transition, and also facing fierce international competition? Do you also plan to ensure better use of EU programs which specifically support digital and technological innovation in the audiovisual sector, while supporting the audiovisual sector in terms of creation, such as the Creative Europe program, which is under your portfolio? Thank you.
Thank you very much for this question, Honourable Vice Chair of CULT Committee. Our creative sector is really a basis for all our innovations and for our rich culture also in Europe. And I think we have to take good care of our creative sector. Online world and internet has created, and digitalization, many new opportunities also for our creative sector, for our artists, because it's often easier to access more publicity via online platforms, new audience via online platforms. But also we have to take care of the fair remuneration of artists, especially when their creative work is used to make business. So nobody shouldn't make business on other people's work without compensating that. And I think it's one of the main worries of creative sector also, especially when they are working with very big online platforms. And that's why it's important that we have legislations on the place. And especially, for example, nowadays, we should look, for example, the filmmakers, that they should have access to data, for example, on their performance, on the video and on-demand services, in order to better also negotiate their conditions. So also transparency is needed more, also that they would have better opportunities when they are negotiating about their contracts and about their license and about the compensation they are having of this from these services. But you were especially also asking how to protect also our creative sector and our journalists. Of course, one important tool will be now our Media Freedom Act, what we will be enforcing together with the Commissioner for Justice, Rule of Law. And of course, we have our important media program where we can fund also the important projects of our creative sector and our journalists.
Okay, now we've got final round. We are more than less 15 minutes behind the schedule. So let's start this immediately, and I give the floor to my colleague.
Thank you so much. So you know the final round is the reversed order. We start with the ESN, Sarah Knaffo. Wird sie ersetzt oder? Nö. Yeah, okay. So she's not here, so you will replace her.
Ja, vielen Dank, Frau Vorsitzende. Ja. Mikro? Ja, vielen Dank, Frau Vorsitzende.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. I have one question. In the electoral campaign this year, there was a lot of talk about that we don't agree. There's one topic. There was an agreement between left and right. That was the right of initiative of the European Parliament. My question would be, would you ensure that there is an approach to bring to strengthen the right of Parliament against Commission, having been here yourself for many years, or do you see that as not possible or not appropriate?
Thank you, Honourable Member. As being a Member of Parliament, and currently I'm still a Member of Parliament, I very much respect, of course, all the expertise we have among our European Parliament members. And I know that Parliament has been very effective during the last years with the initiative reports, and often also, nearly always, the Commission has always taken also the advice of the Parliament and given and came with the proposal after that. So I'm very much, of course, supporting all the actions and all the coordination, cooperation between Commission and Parliament. And if I'm confirmed, I'm willing to work very closely with the Parliament and also listen very carefully to initiatives and ideas and expertise the Parliament is having. Because we know that members of Parliament, you are representing European citizens directly, and you have the contacts to your regions all over Europe, and it's important that the Commission is very carefully listening to the Parliament always.
So now for the left, Hanna Gedin.
Thank you so much. As we have heard here today, Vice President-elect J.D. Vance has claimed that future American support for NATO could be withdrawn if the European Union regulates Elon Musk and his social media platform X. In my home country, Sweden, Elon Musk is also known for not accepting the Swedish model with collective agreements and for circumventing EU legislation when putting strike breakers in his Tesla shops. You have touched upon it a bit today, but I would like to hear a very clear commitment. Regardless of possible pressure and threats from the US and its new administration, can you guarantee that the DSA will be implemented and that foreign interference will not be tolerated?
Thank you very much for this question, Honourable Member. Everybody who is operating, making business in the European markets has to respect our rules and our legislation, and I will fully enforce DMA and DSA and use all the tools we have there.
Now for the Greens, Kim van Sparentak.
Dear Commissioner Designate, we have known for years recommender systems based on clicks and interaction push radicalization, hate and disinformation to the top of your timeline, because that is what people react and click on the most and keeps us glued to our screens the longest. By now, we also know these timelines are highly addictive. Instead of us users having control over what we see online, tech billionaires choose profit over people and democracy again and again. Do you agree that specifically recommender systems based on clicks and interaction pose a systemic risk to public discourse and elections that need urgent mitigating measures? And what will you concretely do to tackle these divisive algorithms based on clicks and interaction? You mentioned legal certainty can promote innovation, but right now it is unclear which recommender system settings are and are not allowed. Will you make more concrete rules or guidelines on this? And will you give effective user choice? Thank you.
Thank you very much for this question. As we know, according to the DSA, the big online platforms, they have to assess the systematic risks and mitigate them. And also DSA includes rules that give users more control and knowledge about the algorithmic amplification and recommender systems and how they affect users' online experience. So more transparency should be provided from the online platform side already. And also online platforms need to provide more transparency about the recommender systems also. VLOPs and these social media platforms and search engines, they must give users the possibility also to opt from being profiled from the recommender systems. And they must also analyze the risks of design and functioning of recommender systems and algorithm systems and set out risk mitigation measures. Currently, I know that Commission is investigating many of these online platforms and their algorithms, also to see that are they in line with our DSA regulation. And also in several open cases, the Commission has included grievances on the design and functioning of platforms' recommender systems. So I know that just last month the Commission has sent requests for information to YouTube, Snapchat and TikTok on the design and functioning of their recommender system. So they are very closely now investigating the case, and of course, if these services are not in line with our regulation, there will be consequences.
Now for Renew, Nicola Minchev.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Mrs. Virkkunen, online piracy of live content continues to undermine both the live content and sports broadcasting sectors and remains a serious issue despite the recent Commission recommendation. The EU IPO estimates that 12% of Europeans and 27% of young people watch sports content illegally. This House has consistently called for robust legislative action to combat such piracy and protect intellectual property rights. Yet the response so far has been non-binding. If the EU IPO's ongoing assessments finds the current recommendation insufficient, will the Commission commit to proposing swift legislative measures to protect the live content creative industries? And in addition, addressing the broader cultural and creative sectors, Europe's creative and esports industries face unique challenges in a rapidly evolving digital landscape. How do you envision tackling these challenges while ensuring the protection of IP rights and fostering innovation in European cultural and creative industries? Thank you.
Thank you very much for this question, Honourable Member. And like you said, online piracy is a key challenge for creative and also in sports sectors. It causes significant loss in revenue for broadcasters and sports events organizers currently. And last year there was adopted a recommendation in the European level, and there the Commission was encouraging market players and member states to take new measures really to address this illegal streaming of live events. But like you said, it's still continuing. We can see it in many cases, and like you were mentioning, a very big amount of people are watching illegally this live content. So I will assess the impact of the recommendation in next year. And in this assessment, I will look also at the effects now on DSA, because of course in the Digital Service Act, there is also a requirement to fight against illegal content online. So in DSA, it's covered, but we look what the effects has been, and as well also the actions now taken by member states in this field. And I will also consider additional measures if these recommendations does not have the expected impact.
For the ECR, Fernand Kartheiser.
Thank you. Mrs. Commissioner Delegate, in your opening remarks, you have underlined that you want to be very strict and swift on DSA oversight. You want to fight disinformation, manipulation, misinformation, and of course, hate speech. You want our rules to be respected, but what are these rules? Aren't they in reality totally arbitrary? Because in reality there are no clear definitions of all these phenomena that you want to fight against and no clear rules. Aren't you talking about, I quote the Commission, protecting civic discourse and finding the right balance even for legal contents and also looking for, I quote, systemic risks without any legal precision? Don't you agree that the Commission is becoming the new Ministry of Truth? And don't you think that the so-called trusted flaggers that should monitor the internet on your behalf are bringing about a shameful culture of denunciation to our societies? Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much for this question, Honourable Member. Yes, that is the case that the Digital Service Act it's not a content law, so it's not stated in the legislation that how the content should be. It's stated that illegal content, which is based to all the member states' own legislation, that illegal content has to be taken down. But then it's, the DSA is regulating the practices online platforms they should have in the place. So they have to have also practices for that, that when content is flagged, that how they are reacting to that. And also there has to be disposal mechanism for the users of these platforms if they think that their content is taken down or hidden. We have a code of practice with online platforms in Europe, and there we are together tackling disinformation also. Sometimes it's not. Disinformation is not always illegal, but it can be very harmful also in our societies, and that's why most of the online platforms, they are also very committed to that, because they want to also create safe and secure environment for their users.
For the PFE, Andras Laszlo.
Thank you very much. When it comes to European strategic autonomy and European sovereignty, the EU's weakness is particularly visible in the field of digital sovereignty. European citizens and businesses rely almost exclusively on non-European services when it comes to searching on the internet, using email, using social media, using cloud services, online shopping, etc. And it's pretty shocking if you think about it. We are light years away from digital sovereignty. You have talked about regulation and pouring money into the sector, but I don't want to ask you about regulation and I don't want to ask you about financing. I want to ask you about outcome, because at the end of the day, we need a robust European digital sector. Regulation in itself is simply not good enough. And I just want your honest opinion. What do you think would be a desirable market share of European companies in the digital sector to have both competition and European digital sovereignty? Thank you.
Thank you very much for this question, Honourable Member. We have set our digital decade targets to our common strategy, Digital Decade Targets 2030. And in the coming years, we will also monitor these targets and where we are. And it's also a good opportunity if we want to set new targets. But I think this is a good tool for us to follow also that where we are when we speak about technological sovereignty, about the skills, about the infrastructure we have in Europe. We set the targets a couple of years ago, and now I think we have to also review them and look at what we want to achieve.
Now for the SND, Giorgio Gori.
Thank you, Chair. Mrs. Virkkunen, torno su un tema che just... I'll come back to something that has already been touched upon. In your letter,
there's the energy footprint is emphasized in digital centers. So how can we make sure that this type of technology is deployed in order to have more effective use of energy? And how can we create a situation which has minimum impact for European families as well? So how do you intend to contribute to the electrification policy that would be out there in order that would go hand in hand, of course, with the digital policy? Thank you.
Thank you very much, honourable member. And this is one of my main priorities, sustainability on the digital transition. And like you said, ICT sector is very energy consuming. Currently, ICT sector is using about 70% of the world's electricity, and it's about to double in the coming years. So that's why we have to pay now close attention to energy efficiency of our investments in this field. EU has set a goal that we want to have climate neutral data centers by 2030, and I think that the important step towards that was when we were setting the goal in Energy Efficient Directive and the requirement also that it's including reporting scheme for data center sustainability. And now we have the data in the coming years that we can better also decide on these future measures here, such as labeling or minimum sustainability requirements. But I see it as an important precondition when we are deciding about investments that we have to have also clean energy for those investments, and we have to use the best available technologies and look really at how we can also encourage these investments in different regions in Europe. Because in the same time, I see that green transition and digital transition, they are going very much hand in hand, and digitalization can help very much also greening of our industries and societies. But also we have to look that we make the best choices when it comes to energy and energy sources and energy efficiency of these investments.
And now the last speaker for the EPP, Paulo Cunha.
Commissioner, I will speak in Portuguese. Cumpre-me colocar-lhe, Senhora Comissária.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Designate, I'd like to ask you the last question from this confirmation hearing. I'd like to congratulate you for your clarity in defining your priorities, and thank you very much for all of the details that you've given us to the questions that we've asked. So, Commissioner Designate, it's clear that there is a significant lack of digital infrastructure in Europe. We need to invest in artificial intelligence. We invest 7 times less than the United States of America. And this gap could lead to technological dependence. We need to ensure our strategic autonomy. So what strategy will you apply to improve public digital infrastructure in order to ensure better strategic autonomy and therefore strengthening cybersecurity? Thank you.
Thank you very much, honourable member. And this is really the key of our technological sovereignty, that we have very high quality modern infrastructure here in Europe for our citizens and for our industries and for our SMEs in our regions. And there I'm preparing a Digital Networks Act to achieve this target, to really make sure that we can reduce red tape and bureaucracy, and we can also have future-proof solutions here when it comes to new technologies, because we know that nowadays the connections, they are more and more connecting not only the connections we have in the ground, but also the space has to be connected, and also the cloud infrastructure, edge computing. So we have to be prepared for all this future also when it comes to our connections and infrastructure in Europe. And in the same time, we have to boost the investments in AI, and the first step will be the AI factories. So giving access to supercomputing for our SMEs and startups and for our researchers. And in the same time, we have to make sure that Europe's industrial data is used for new innovations. So we have to remove the obstacles from there also. And in the same time, we have to invest the skills of our people, to educate the people, and make sure that we have the ICT experts needed in this field. So there is not only one solution how to achieve these targets we have set in our Digital Decade report. So we need investments to research and development, invest to skills. We have to give access to capital and access to finance for our startups and SMEs, and their Capital Markets Union is playing a very important role. And we have to make sure that we have that kind of regulatory framework that encourages innovations and investments in this area. And I'm ready to work together with you towards these goals.
So much, dear colleagues. This concludes the final round. And I think it was a very rich and informative hearing. Of course, now we want to give the Commissioner-designate the chance for some concluding remarks, not more than 5 minutes. Please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, honourable chairs, honourable members. Thank you very much for your questions and for the inspiring discussions in this late evening. I'm sure that you have had a long day before that. I think we discussed many key aspects on my direct responsibilities, as well as responsibilities of the commissioners belonging to my cluster. It has been a privilege to respond to your questions, to share my vision and concrete initiatives also for a more prosperous, democratic and secure future for Europe. If you confirm me, from day one, I will work together with you and the whole Parliament in a spirit of collegiality, respect and dialogue. We have discussed many big challenges ahead of us. One challenge is transforming Europe into an AI continent, a leading hub for AI innovations where we channel investments into the critical technologies, we turn research into commercial success stories, and our citizens that they can benefit from better services, public and private, empowered by AI. We have also discussed the importance of keeping our citizens, especially our kids, safe both online and offline. We talked about my commitment to defend freedom of speech and to protect a free and independent press, while strengthening our societies against foreign information manipulation. We discussed the importance of securing our borders and robust migration policy in line with the expectations of our citizens. We also discussed how to establish a strong and common defence strategy for safer and more resilient Europe. Finally, security is key. We need to make Europe a place where every person feels safe, both online and offline. We must put Europe back on the path of competitiveness and growth, make Europe self-reliant in security, and unite around our core values of freedom, rule of law, and democracy. This is a now or never moment for a direction shift. Technological leadership is crucial for our competitiveness. We owe it to the next generations to build a future where technology supports green transition that is also economically and socially sustainable. A future where we put people at the center of the digital transformation and leave no one behind. I'm also committed to simplifying businesses. This is what especially our entrepreneurs and startups need. We also cannot enforce our legislation without legal certainty and clear rules. Our discussions today shows the extensive responsibilities of the portfolio entrusted to me by the President of the Commission. I will not carry this responsibility lightly. Should you confirm my appointment, I will serve the interest of our citizens and the general interest of the Union, working closely with you, the Member States and the institutions. I can say that I enjoy running in my free time. And as you know, if there's other runners also, running is not just about fitness. It's about stamina and strategy and the determination to reach the finish line. So if you confirm me, I will bring the same commitment over the next 5 years, sparing no effort and holding myself accountable to you. If you confirm me, I will leave this house also with heavy heart as a member of parliament, because it has been an honor to serve European citizens with you as your colleague for more than 10 years. If confirmed, I look forward in my new role to continuing to work in close collaboration with you and the whole European Parliament to make the bold shift needed for Europe. So my door will be always open to you. Together, I'm sure we can do it.
I'd like to thank all members who took part in the hearing, and of course to Mrs. Henna Virkkunen for the replies, and we close this hearing, and of course at 10 we will have evaluation meeting. Thank you very much.